Hey, Wide Awake family. If you see this, it's your sign to smash that like button. Yes, you listening right now. That way YouTube shows you more amazing stories like this one. We love you all. Now enjoy the stories. I didn't think saying yes to going back to his flat would turn into anything weird. The date had been so normal up to that point. Drinks at a quiet bar, some food, a nice walk back toward the station. He was calm, polite, not awkward, not pushy. He didn't rush anything. He didn't act strange. If anything, he felt almost too normal, like someone who practices being normal until he gets it right. When he asked if I wanted to stop by his place to grab a jacket before we went for dessert, I didn't think twice. His flat was only a few minutes away, and I wasn't picking up any weird vibes. I told myself not every guy who invites you over has a dark agenda. Sometimes people genuinely just forget their jacket. We walked up a narrow staircase to the second floor of a small block of flats. A hallway smelled like dust and cleaning products. Nothing creepy yet. He unlocked the door and stepped inside first, switching on the lights. It was tidy. Sofa, coffee table, shoes by the radiator, plants on the window ledge. It felt lived in but clean. He told me to make myself comfortable while he went to grab the jacket. I sat on the edge of the sofa, looking around the room casually. I noticed he didn't have many decorations. No posters, no framed pictures on shelves, no random stuff that shows personality. Just blank walls and clean surfaces. Almost too clean. He came back after a moment, holding the jacket. He asked if I wanted water before we left, then went to the kitchen to grab a bottle. I could hear him rummaging around. The tap ran. The fridge opened and closed. Then I noticed a door at the end of the hallway had been left slightly open. I don't know why I noticed it. Maybe because everything else in the flat looked intentionally perfect. Maybe because the door was cracked just enough for a thin line of light to leak out. Maybe because a tiny, stupid part of me wondered if he had a gaming room or something. I wasn't planning to snoop. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I just stood up to stretch my legs and glanced down the hallway. I took one step closer. Then another. I don't know why I kept walking. Something felt off, but not in a dramatic horror movie way. More like a quiet little itch telling me something wasn't right. I reached the door. I nudged it open gently with my fingertips, and everything inside me dropped. The entire wall across the room, the whole wall, was covered in photos. Printed photos, cutout photos, screenshots, pages from profiles, all of them tacked up with tape and pins, overlapping each other like some kind of giant nightmare collage. Photos of women. Different women. Dozens of them. Maybe more. Women from dating apps. I recognized the types of photos immediately. Mirror selfies, holiday pictures, gym pics, candid smiling pics, full body pics, Snapchat filter pics, the kind everyone uses on their profiles. And next to almost every photo were notes. Handwritten notes. Small ones, big ones, some scribbled fast, some neat and long. Notes describing their jobs. Notes describing their routines. Notes describing their personalities. Notes describing where they lived, or where he guessed they lived. Notes describing what they liked. Notes describing their families. Notes describing their hobbies. Notes describing what didn't work with them. And in the worst part, notes describing me. My picture was on the wall too, right in the middle of the college. A photo I posted on my profile, the one of me near the fountain downtown. He had printed it out. Underneath it was a note in his handwriting. Met her tonight. Seemed steady, might be the one. My whole body went cold. My breathing slowed without me meaning for it to. My fingers started shaking. I stepped back from the door, but I couldn't stop staring. Some of the photos had red X marks on them. Some had circles. Some had arrows pointing to details about them. Some had entire paragraphs written underneath. One even had a list titled Pros and Cons. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't some art project. This wasn't research. This wasn't normal. It was obsession. It was pattern tracking. It was studying women like they were puzzles he needed to organize and understand. I heard his footsteps behind me. Slow. Too slow. He stood in the hallway watching me. I didn't even hear him walk up. His voice came out calm, too calm, as he said I wasn't supposed to see that yet. Yet. My chest tightened instantly. I forced myself to turn around, not too fast, not too shaky, not wanting him to think I was about to run. He stepped forward one tiny step, enough to close the distance just slightly, and said he could explain everything. I didn't want an explanation. I didn't want details. I didn't want to hear the logic behind a wall of women he monitored like case files. But I nodded anyway because I didn't know what else to do. My throat felt tight. My legs felt weak. Every part of me was screaming to run, but my brain kept replaying the fact that I was in his flat, alone, at the end of a hallway with only one exit. He said he had trouble trusting people. He said keeping track of patterns helped him make better choices. He said he wasn't dangerous. He said he was just careful. He said the wall was how he made sure he didn't waste time. He said I fit the checklist. Checklist. The word made my skin crawl. I forced a smile. Forced a calm nod. I said I understood. I said it was okay. I lied through my teeth while my heart hammered so hard I felt it in my ears. He relaxed slightly. That was the only chance I had, and I took it. I told him I needed to grab something from my bag in the lounge. He nodded, still talking, still rambling, still convinced I wasn't planning anything. The moment I reached the lounge, I grabbed my bag, slid my shoes on without even bending down properly, and walked toward the door. Not running. Not fast enough to trigger panic. Just walking. He called my name from the hallway. My hand shook as I unlocked the door. I said something about needing to call my mom. I didn't even turn around to see if he believed me. I stepped outside, closed the door, and walked down the stairs so quickly I nearly fell twice. The second I reached the street, I ran. Not looking back. Not slowing down. Not breathing properly. I didn't stop until I reached the main road where cars and people made everything feel safer. Later that night, I checked the app. His profile was gone. Not unmatched. Deleted. Like he already knew I'd never come back, and didn't want any trace of himself there when I told someone what I'd seen. I wasn't even nervous about the date. It was dinner at a casual place in town. Warm lighting, fake plants everywhere, the type of restaurant where the loudest thing is the drinks machine. Safe, public, easy. I picked it on purpose because I didn't want any weird surprises. I just wanted one normal night. She showed up looking exactly like her pictures. Hoodie, jeans, little crossbody bag, hair clipped back. She smiled when she saw me, not too excited, not awkward, just relaxed. She seemed completely normal. She sat down opposite me, took off her jacket, and complimented the place straight away. Everything felt fine. The waiter brought us menus, we ordered drinks, we talked about work and random hobbies. It was so normal that I actually started thinking maybe, for once, the night wouldn't go downhill. Until she opened her bag. Not slowly, not sneakily, just casual, like she was grabbing lip balm or a tissue or something boring. She pulled the zip open wide, and sitting inside her bag, clear as day, was a huge knife. Not a pocket knife. Not a kitchen knife. A massive, heavy, full metal blade that looked like something you'd see in a camping shop or a movie scene that ends badly. My breath caught instantly. My stomach dropped so hard I felt sick. I didn't react out loud, but I know my face changed because she laughed quietly like she found my reaction cute. She said she always came prepared. Prepared for what? Prepared for who? Prepared why? I couldn't even form a sentence. My brain was moving faster than my mouth. She didn't treat it like a secret. She didn't hide it again. She didn't look embarrassed. She wasn't even worried someone else might see it. She just kept her bag sitting open on the table like it was normal to carry around a weapon the size of my forearm. I tried to stay calm. I tried to breathe slow. The restaurant felt hotter, smaller, quieter. The music in the background suddenly felt far away. I asked her, as casually as possible, why she had it. She shrugged, and said something that froze my bones. She said she'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. She said it in that calm, light tone you use when you're giving basic advice. She didn't blink. She didn't smile. She just said it like carrying a giant blade was the same as carrying a reusable shopping bag. I looked around, scared someone else had seen it, worried the waiter would come by and freak out. But the angle of the table blocked the view. Nobody else noticed. It was just me, her, and that knife in the soft restaurant lighting. She started talking again, but not about the knife. She went right back to chatting about random things like favorite foods and her childhood dog. Meanwhile, the bag stayed open, the blade glinting under the lights every time she moved her arm. My hands were shaking under the table. I didn't want to make her angry. I didn't want to ask the wrong question. Her energy wasn't aggressive, but it was unpredictable, and that scared me more than if she'd actually acted threatening. She leaned forward at one point and pushed her bag a little closer to make room for the drinks tray when the waiter arrived. The knife shifted inside, making a dull metal sound against something else. My whole body tensed. She didn't react. She didn't even glance down. She just thanked the waiter like nothing strange existed between us. When he walked away, she reached into the bag again. I froze completely, breath locked in my chest. But she only pulled out her phone. The knife stayed inside, still visible, still sitting there like a warning. I realized then that she wasn't showing it off. She wasn't trying to scare me. She wasn't trying to threaten me. She genuinely thought it was normal to carry around a massive blade. She thought this was what being prepared meant. She thought this was something people do on dates. She asked me what movie we should watch after dinner. After dinner. Like she wasn't sitting across from me with a weapon that could cut through a table. I said I didn't know. My voice cracked. She didn't seem to notice. She rambled about horror movies and then some documentary she saw about survival tactics. I kept nodding, pretending to be calm, while my brain was screaming inside. What if I said something wrong? What if she got offended? What if a date went sideways? What if she didn't like my answer? Every time she moved her hand near the bag, I felt every muscle in my body tense. I wasn't scared she'd attack me randomly. I was scared because I didn't understand her at all. I didn't know her logic. I didn't know her boundaries. I didn't know what she considered normal. We finished our drinks, and she asked if I wanted dessert. I said no. She looked disappointed, not angry, just slightly confused that I didn't want to stay longer. She zipped her bag up finally, the blade disappearing into darkness, but the shape of it still pressed against the fabric like a shadow. We stood up to leave, and she gave me a tight hug, her bag knocking against my hip. I swear I felt the metal through the fabric. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. She asked if I wanted to see her again. I lied and said I'd text her. She smiled, said she hoped I did, and walked off down the street, swinging the bag casually at her side like it didn't hold something that could end someone in seconds. I got into my car and just sat there with my hands shaking on the wheel. The restaurant lights looked too warm, too calm, like nothing wrong had just happened at all. Later that night, I checked the app. Her profile was still there, but she had updated her bio. One new line. Always prepared. That was it. Just those 2 words. I didn't even think the date would be that deep. It was supposed to be a simple evening walk to a viewpoint. Fresh air, sunset, nothing stressful. He picked the place. He said it was quiet. Barely anyone goes there at night. Perfect for talking. That should have been my first clue, honestly, but I was trying to be open-minded. He seemed normal in chat. Not overly excited, not flat, not weird. Just fine. When I got there, the hill was almost empty. Just one older couple packing up their picnic and a guy walking his dog far down the path. The sky was orange, the air felt slightly cold, and the view of the town below actually looked pretty. He was leaning on the railing when I arrived, smiling like he'd been waiting for ages. He gave me a quick hug, asked about my day, and walked with me toward a bench at the edge of the viewpoint. Everything was normal for the first 5 minutes, just the usual small talk. He complimented my jacket. I laughed at one of his jokes. Nothing strange. Then he pulled out his phone. At first I thought he was going to show me a meme or something, but he didn't. He opened some weird-looking app I'd never seen before. Lots of charts, lots of random numbers, lots of graphs with names that didn't even sound real. He angled the screen toward me like he was about to show off something important. I pretended to look politely, not really understanding what I was seeing. I didn't even get a chance to ask before he launched straight into it. He said he'd been working on something big. I nodded, thinking he meant a work project or some hobby. Then he said it was crypto. I swear my stomach dropped. I thought he meant he invested in crypto. Loads of people do, whatever. But no, he wasn't talking about investing. He was talking about inventing. He zoomed in on one of the charts and told me proudly that he created a coin called Sky Konex. I had never heard of that in my entire life, but the way he said it made it sound like I should have cheered. The logo looked like something a 10-year-old would draw on a school iPad. Just a blue circle with a badly edited star in the middle. I said it looked cool just to be polite. That was apparently the greatest mistake of my life. His eyes lit up like fireworks. He sat up straighter, leaning closer, lowering his voice like he was revealing some world-changing secret. He clicked to another coin on the app, Cloud Mint. Then another one, Stardrop. Then another, Other Sky. The names got worse the more he scrolled. He said they were all his. All made by him. All guaranteed to explode in value. I asked, carefully, how he made them. He said he just coded them. I asked what platform he used. He said a private one. I asked how other people buy them. He said they can't yet. I asked who was investing. And that's when everything shifted. His face twitched, just slightly, like the question offended him. He told me they weren't public yet, but they would be soon, and that anyone smart would get in now. He said I should invest that night before the prices jump. I tried to keep a neutral expression, but inside I felt this creeping dread. I told him I didn't know much about crypto. He said that didn't matter. I told him I wasn't ready to invest in anything. He said I was missing a massive opportunity. I laughed awkwardly, hoping it would soften the moment. It didn't. He stopped smiling completely. His whole face changed, jaw tight, eyes half narrowed, posture straightened like he was suddenly annoyed. I didn't instantly trust him with my money. He stared at me like I had insulted his entire life by not handing over cash for his made-up named coins. He asked how much I could put in right now. I said I wasn't putting anything. He asked again, and again, and again. His voice kept getting sharper, quieter, more controlled each time. Not yelling, not aggressive physically, just this weird, intense tone like he couldn't understand how I wasn't throwing money at him. He opened the app again and pointed at random spikes and charts that looked fake, like he manually dragged them with a finger or something. Then he said something that shook me. He said only disloyal people refuse to invest. Disloyal? To who? We met for the first time 20 minutes ago. I told him I didn't know him anything. He didn't blink. He scooted closer on the bench, too close, still showing me the phone screen like repetition would magically change my mind. He told me people who hesitate always regret it. He told me he'd let me in cheap. He told me he could make me rich. I told him no again. Big mistake. He slammed his phone down on the bench so hard the screen flickered. Not broken, but definitely glitching. He ran his hands through his hair roughly, muttering under his breath about how I was just like the others and how nobody believed in him. His breathing sped up. His eyes got wide. He stared at me like I had betrayed him even though we barely knew each other. I stood up slowly, not wanting to set him off more. I told him I had to leave. He stood up too, fast, blocking the small path in front of the bench. He asked me one more time, in this low, shaky voice, if I was going to invest or not. I said no. He stared at me for way too long, just stood there in the fading sunlight, chest rising and falling hard, fists clenched like he was recalculating his entire life. Then he stepped aside. Not calmly. Just suddenly, like the twisted move was made by someone else pulling a string. I walked away without looking back. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to keep walking until I reached the car park. When I finally sat in my car, my hands were shaking so badly I had to wait before turning the keys. That night, I checked the app. His profile was still there, but his entire bio had changed. It said, "Don't match if you can't handle the opportunities." Then another line, "Loyal investors only." I unmatched him instantly. The next day, his profile was gone completely. Maybe deleted, maybe banned, maybe he blocked me. But sometimes when I'm scrolling, I see usernames or icons that look weirdly similar to his coins, and I swear my chest tightens every time.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
I wasn't even hyped for the date. It was mini golf, the safest, least serious option in the world. You can't really mess up mini golf. You hit a ball, you laugh at how terrible you both are, you get a slushie afterwards. That's it. No pressure, no weird vibes, no reason to expect anything strange. He seemed normal in the chats too. Chill, funny, a bit competitive, but in an entertaining way. He picked a glow-in-the-dark mini golf place with neon lights, loud music, and plastic jumbo decorations everywhere. It was busy but not packed, filled with couples taking pictures and kids screaming about losing balls under the stairs. When he arrived, he gave me a hug, bought the game tokens, grabbed 2 clubs, and said he was excited. Everything felt right. No tension, no awkward silence, just normal first date energy. But the very first weird thing happened before we even started. He kept glancing at the cubby shelves. If you've been to mini golf places, you know the setup. A long rack of open cubbies where people shove their bags, coats, shopping, all because they don't want to drag everything around the whole course. Most people barely look at their stuff. They're too busy playing. He noticed that instantly. Every time someone walked up to put their bag down, he watched them. Not in a creepy way, but in this analytical way, like he was memorizing which bag belonged to which person. I thought I was imagining it until he made it too obvious. When we got to the first hole, I tried focusing on the game. It had glowing dinosaurs, weird slopes, and a purple fog machine. Fun. Silly. Nothing serious. I laughed when my ball bounced straight back toward me. He laughed too, but his eyes kept drifting. Not at the props. Not at me. Not at the scoreboard on the wall. At the shelves. At the bags. At the wallets you could see inside when someone left their purse slightly open. I didn't want to assume anything bad. I didn't want to be dramatic on a first date, but something about the way he paced around the first 2 holes made my stomach twist. He held his club loosely, almost like a prop, while his eyes scanned the whole entrance area behind me. By hole 4, he barely hit the ball. Every time I looked away, even for a second, he stepped back toward the shelves, pretending to tie his shoe or fix his hoodie. I asked if he was okay. He said he was fine. He wasn't fine. The neon lights flickered, the music got louder, kids ran past with glow sticks, and he took advantage of all of it. On hole 7, a big family walked in, loud and chaotic, carrying loads of bags. They shoved everything into the cubbies at once, talking over each other about who wanted what color ball. They didn't look at their bags again for even a second. I watched him more closely now. He pretended he needed a smaller club and walked toward the rack where they kept extra ones, right next to the cubbies. He glanced at me, saw I was distracted by a fake glow-in-the-dark waterfall, and slipped his hand into one of the open bags fast. Too fast. He tucked something into his sleeve. Then another. He walked back smiling like nothing happened. My heart started racing hard. I didn't want to accuse him out loud in case I was wrong, but I wasn't wrong. I knew I wasn't. His sleeve looked heavier. His steps were quicker. His breathing changed. He didn't even look at the next hole. He just watched the family walk deeper into the course. He was waiting for the moment they noticed. I felt sick. I told him I wanted to grab a drink. He nodded but didn't come with me. He said he'd catch up. I walked toward the snack bar slowly, pretending to look at slushy flavors while watching him from the corner of my eye. He walked back to the cubbies. Again. He scanned the room, checked if anyone was nearby, then reached into another bag. This time he wasn't fast. He was confident. He dug deeper, looking for wallets like he knew exactly what he was doing. I didn't know what to do. My hands were shaking. I didn't want to be involved. I didn't want anyone thinking I was part of this. I didn't even want him to see me watching because something about the way he moved scared me. Then everything exploded at once. A woman screamed behind us. Not a loud horror scream, a furious, sharp one. She shouted that her wallet was gone. Her husband started yelling too, blaming their kids, blaming the place, blaming everyone. Staff rushed over, confused and panicked. The whole room shifted instantly. People stopped playing. Music suddenly felt too loud. Neon lights made everything look more chaotic. The woman stormed up to the cubbies, digging through every bag, throwing jackets on the floor, crying that everything important was inside. Staff tried to calm her down, but she was shaking, furious, terrified. And he froze. Completely froze. He kept his back turned like he was just staring at hole 9, but his shoulders tightened in a way that told me everything. He knew. He knew they were about to figure it out. Because the moment another person shouted that their wallet was missing too, he moved. Not toward the exit. Not toward me. He shoved something behind the fake volcano prop. Staff saw the movement immediately. One of the workers shouted for him to stop and pointed directly at him. The entire course turned in unison. He tried to walk away, calmly, like he had nothing to do with anything. But someone grabbed his hoodie. Another staff member grabbed his arm. He panicked. He tried to pull away, mumbling some nonsense about misunderstanding. When the first wallet slipped out of his sleeve and hit the floor, the entire room erupted. People were yelling. Kids were crying. Staff were furious. Someone called the police instantly. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. He dropped 2 more wallets trying to back away, and the look on his face when he realized he was trapped was something I'll never forget. Not scared, not sorry, not confused. Angry. Like he was annoyed he got caught. Security rushed in from the arcade next door and pinned him near the blacklight jungle wall while staff collected the wallets off the floor. The victims were yelling at him, demanding their stuff back, calling him disgusting, calling him a thief. He didn't look at me. Not once. He didn't shout my name, didn't ask for help, didn't try to act like the date mattered at all. I walked out quietly while everyone was focused on him. Not running, just moving fast enough that nobody stopped me or asked who I was with. The outside air felt freezing. My throat felt tight. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I checked the app later that night. His profile was gone. Not unmatched. The whole account disappeared, like he wiped himself from existence the second he realized he couldn't hide behind jokes and neon lights anymore. I wasn't even sure about going stargazing in the first place. It sounded cute in chat, but once I actually got ready to leave, I kept wondering why I agreed. She said she loved quiet places at night, somewhere away from traffic and crowds, and honestly, I didn't mind getting fresh air. It felt like the sort of harmless, simple date nobody could mess up. She picked a field just outside town. One of those wide open spaces where the grass is uneven and there's always a random cold breeze no matter what month it is. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a blanket and staring at the sky like she was waiting for something. She looked normal, calm, soft smile, hoodie, leggings, hair tied up. She looked peaceful, actually. She waved at me when I walked over, and the whole thing felt like it might be easy and relaxing. We sat down and talked for a bit. She pointed out constellations, even though half of them looked like random dots to me. She laughed a lot, and not in that weird forced way. Everything about the first 20 minutes felt fine. But then she started looking at the ground. Not a quick glance. Long, focused stares at the grass beneath us. Her eyes flicked across patches of dirt like she was searching for something specific. I asked if she dropped something. She said no. She kept scanning the ground. Then she stood up abruptly. I watched her walk off the blanket and kneel down near a small patch where the grass looked slightly darker. At first I thought she was just sitting somewhere else, but then she started scraping at the ground with her hand. Not gently. Like she was trying to uncover something. I asked what she was doing, confused. She didn't even look at me. She said she needed to check something. Then she said the words that made my entire body freeze. She told me she buried something here last week. My heart dropped straight through my stomach. She said it so casually too, like she was talking about losing an earring or hiding a time capsule for fun. She didn't stop digging. Her fingernails clawed at the dirt, breaking small roots, pushing grass aside. She dug deeper, breathing fast, muttering to herself. I stood up slowly, not sure if I should move closer or stay back. My brain was racing, imagining every possible thing someone would bury out here. A pet, evidence, something stolen. Something worse? She kept digging. Her hoodie sleeves slid back, revealing dirt all over her arms. She didn't care. She didn't even wipe her face when her hair fell into the mud. She was in some sort of tunnel vision, completely locked into whatever she was doing. I finally asked what she buried. She paused, turned her head toward me slowly. Then she said she needed to make sure it didn't move. Move? Move? My skin went cold. Before I could ask anything else, she went back to digging faster than before. Small chunks of earth flew behind her. I took a tiny step backward without meaning to. Something about watching someone dig like that in the dark hits different. It feels wrong even before you know what's actually happening. She suddenly gasped. Not scared. Excited. She leaned deeper into the hole she'd made, reaching both hands inside like she was searching for something hidden at the bottom. Her hoodie bunched up. Her breathing got louder. She kept whispering to herself. That's when her fingers hit something solid. She froze. I swear the air around us felt heavier. The field seemed too quiet. The stars above us suddenly felt too far away. She pulled something up. But before I could see what it was, bright lights hit us from across the field. Fast. Harsh. Blinding. I flinched and shielded my eyes. She panicked, dropping whatever she was holding and scrambling backward like an animal caught stealing food. The lights got closer, car headlights, moving straight toward us. A vehicle stopped a few feet away, doors opening instantly. Officers stepped out, walking quickly but not running. They shone flashlights on both of us. One called her name. Not the name she gave me. A different one. She froze again, eyes wide like the shock was finally catching up to her. Another officer told her to step away from the hole. She refused, clutching the dirt like she was protecting something. One officer approached her slowly, telling her they weren't here to hurt her. The other asked me to stand to the side and keep my hands visible. I stumbled back toward my car, heart pounding so hard I felt dizzy. They kept talking to her calmly, but she was shaking her head over and over, saying they weren't supposed to know she was here. She said she'd been careful. She said nobody saw her last time. She kept repeating it, voice breaking. One officer reached into the hole and pulled out what she had been grabbing. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't something dangerous, but it wasn't normal either. It was a locked metal box, dented and covered in dirt. Attached to it was a label, ripped, muddy, barely legible. I couldn't read what it said. The officers seemed to recognize it instantly. They told her she violated some kind of order, that she wasn't allowed near this land, that she'd been warned before, that they'd been tracking her movements because she kept sneaking out here at night, digging up the same spot over and over. She started crying, not loud, just this cracked, defeated sound like she'd been holding it in forever. She kept saying she wasn't done yet, that she needed to check it, that she needed to make sure it hadn't changed. Two officers gently took her away from the hole and helped her stand. She didn't fight. She didn't argue. She just kept staring at the box like losing sight of it would break her. They escorted her to the vehicle. She didn't even look at me as they walked her past. She was gone within minutes, the car disappearing down the dirt road, leaving me alone with a hole in the ground and my heartbeat still hammering. One officer stayed behind to talk to me. He said I wasn't in trouble. He said she'd been dealing with something for a long time. He didn't explain the box. He didn't explain what she buried. He just said she wasn't supposed to come out here anymore, for her own safety and everyone else's. Then he left too. I stood there for a long time, staring at the hole, the disturbed dirt, the grass she tore up with her bare hands. The night sky above us looked calm again, like nothing happened, like she hadn't just dug up something that terrified her enough to break. I got in my car and drove home with the radio off. Her profile was gone by morning. Not unmatched. Removed. Like she had buried herself too. I wasn't even excited for the date. It was one of those days where everything felt tired before it even started. But he seemed normal in the chat. Polite, chill, not over the top. And I didn't feel like canceling again. He suggested grabbing a coffee at this low cafe near the park, the one with big windows and those tiny tables that barely fit two drinks. I liked the vibe there, so I agreed. When I arrived, he was already inside, sitting near the window where sunlight hit the table just right. He waved at me with this awkward but sweet smile, the kind that makes you think he's harmless and shy. He stood up, gave me a small hug, and asked what I wanted to drink. Everything felt fine. Normal. Safe. We sat down with our coffees, and the conversation was easy at first. Stuff about work, music, random stories, small talk that didn't feel forced. He talked slowly, pausing a lot like he was careful with his words. It didn't bother me. Some people are like that. But the weirdness started almost immediately. He kept staring at people. Not in a casual people-watching way. Not glancing around the cafe like someone distracted. No, he was staring at couples. Every single couple that walked in and walked out, ordered drinks, or sat down. His eyes followed them like he was tracking them. If a pair sat near us, he watched them until they noticed and glanced back. If they laughed, he'd lean forward slightly. If they held hands, he'd narrow his eyes like he was studying something specific. It made my stomach twist a little, but I tried to ignore it. Maybe he was just socially awkward. Maybe he liked analyzing people. I didn't want to assume he was strange based on something small. But it didn't stop. He ignored half the things I said because he was too focused on whoever was sitting behind me. When I turned to look, it was always the same. A couple drinking lats, or a pair sharing a pastry, or a boyfriend hugging his girlfriend's shoulder. Every time I turned back to him, he'd look away quickly like he didn't want me catching him. At one point, a couple near the counter started arguing quietly. Nothing dramatic, just a small disagreement about what to order. He leaned forward so suddenly that I jumped a little. His eyes locked on them like he was listening through the noise of grinders and chatter. I tried to laugh it off and joke that he must like people watching. He didn't laugh. He just smiled in this weird slow way, like I'd said something meaningful instead of something silly. Then he asked me if I ever noticed how couples behave when they think nobody is watching. I shrugged it off and asked why. He looked at his cup for a long second, then reached into his bag. The moment he pulled out the notebook, I felt something inside me tighten. It wasn't a normal size. It was a thick, worn-down notebook with bent edges and a stretched spine that looked like it had been opened way too many times. The cover was plain black, no designs, no stickers, no labels. He placed it on the table gently, like it was something fragile and important. Then he slid it toward me. I didn't even want to open it, but he encouraged me with this quiet nod, eyes wide and expectant. So I did. And I wish I never did. Inside, every single line was filled with handwriting. Not names of friends or notes or sketches. Names of strangers. Hundreds of them, maybe more. It looked like he'd been writing there for years. Each page had a name, then bullet points. Patterns, times, locations. Descriptions of couples he'd watched. Where they sat, how they touched each other, how often they fought, how often they smiled. Who leaned closer, who looked away, what they ordered, who left first, how long they stayed, what they wore. Every page was like a case study. I flipped through slowly, my hands shaking. My throat felt tight. He watched my face closely, like he wanted to see how impressed I was. Then I reached a name I recognized. Not a friend. Not someone I knew personally. But a couple I'd seen on social media, influencers who visited this exact cafe sometimes, and he had notes about them too. Detailed ones. He followed them here more than once. I felt sick. He leaned closer and whispered, almost proudly, that he had been doing research for years. He said he was studying human patterns, studying relationships, studying love, studying behavior. He said he only followed people in public and only long enough to understand them. He said couples were perfect subjects because they revealed so much when they thought they were safe. I stared at him speechless because he said all of this like it was a normal hobby, like it was scrapbooking, like everyone followed strangers and wrote down how they acted. He mistook my silence for fascination and grabbed the notebook back, flipping to another page. He stopped at a fresh entry, one with today's date. My name. My clothes. The time I walked in. The fact I didn't notice him at first. How I held my cup. How I looked around when I felt nervous. The way I laughed once. He wrote all of that in the 5 minutes we'd been sitting there. My entire body locked up. He said he started writing about me the moment I walked through the door, because he already saw patterns forming. Patterns forming right in front of him. I closed the notebook slowly and told him I needed a second to fix my sleeve. I forced a smile, stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked calmly toward the door like nothing was wrong. The moment I stepped outside, my legs almost buckled. I walked fast. Too fast. Almost running. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see if he was still sitting there taking notes about how I left. Later that night, I checked the app. He unmatched me. Not blocked. Not deleted. Unmatched. Like he only needed one meeting. One chapter. One name to add to his collection. I wasn't even trying to impress anyone that night. I'd had a long week, my brain felt fried, and the only reason I suggested cooking was because I didn't feel like going anywhere crowded. She seemed chill in the chats. Funny, easy to talk to, nothing intense. When she said she loved home-cooked meals, I thought cool, simple evening, nothing crazy. She arrived right on time. Hoodie, jeans, hair tied back, holding a small gift bag with snacks she said she brought for the movie later. She stepped inside like she'd been here before, glancing around with this warm smile that made the whole atmosphere feel relaxed. She complimented my kitchen, asked what I was cooking, hovered beside me while I chopped stuff. It all felt normal. The dinner actually went decent. We talked easily, laughed at random things, ate on the sofa because my table was covered in laundry. Nothing weird happened. Not even a tiny red flag. If anything, it felt like one of the most normal dates I'd had in months. No strange questions, no weird energy, no uncomfortable moments. After we ate, she asked if she could use the bathroom. I pointed her down the hallway. She walked off casually, humming to herself. I didn't think twice about it. Why would I? I stayed in the kitchen rinsing plates and trying to decide what snack to bring out for the movie. But after a few minutes, something felt off. She'd been gone too long. At first, I told myself maybe she was fixing her makeup or scrolling her phone, but something about the silence down the hall felt heavy. Too still. Too quiet. My bathroom fan makes noise, but I didn't hear it. No running water either. I called her name softly. Nothing. I walked toward the hallway slowly, not trying to freak myself out. When I reached it, I saw the bathroom door wide open. Empty. That uneasy twist hit my stomach instantly. I took one step down the hall, and that's when I heard it. The faint sound of fabric moving. Not rustling. Folding. Deliberate. Soft. Repetitive. Coming from my bedroom. I froze. Every thought in my head clashed at once. Confusion, worry, irritation. Something darker. I didn't want to assume anything bad, but nothing about that sound made sense. Why would she be in my bedroom? Why would she be touching clothes? I walked toward the door slowly, my heartbeat loud in my ears. The door was half open. I pushed it lightly. What I saw made my whole chest tighten. She was standing next to my dresser, drawers pulled out, neatly folding my shirts and placing them back inside like she'd been doing it for years. My clothes were stacked in perfect blocks, sorted by color, refolded like I'd been living wrong this whole time. On my bed was a pile of other clothes she hadn't gotten to yet. Hoodies, socks, boxers, everything arranged into low categories. She looked up at me. No panic. No guilt. No embarrassment. Just a calm smile. Like nothing about this was strange. Like she'd been waiting for me to see. I managed to ask what she was doing, but my voice didn't even sound like mine. She told me she was helping, like it was the most natural explanation in the world. She said she'd noticed my clothes were messy earlier and thought she'd start organizing things so it feels more homely for both of us. Both of us. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. She kept talking casually, rambling about how she loved folding clothes, how she always rearranged stuff wherever she went, how she wanted my place to feel set up properly since she planned on spending a lot more time here. I asked her, as politely as I could, to stop touching my things. She paused, looked confused, then kept folding. Like she didn't hear me, or didn't accept the idea that I could tell her no. I stepped closer and repeated myself firmly. She finally turned properly to look at me. Her expression changed. Not angry, not sad. Something unsettling, like I'd broken some solid expectation she built in her head. She said I should be grateful. She said she was fixing my space. She said she had already organized the bottom drawer for her stuff later, and when I glanced down, she wasn't lying. She had cleared half a drawer and lined it with paper from my kitchen to keep her things clean. My chest tightened again. I told her she needed to stop and come back to the lounge. She stayed still. Her hand rested on another one of my shirts like she wasn't ready to give it back. It wasn't until I raised my voice a little that she finally stepped away from the dresser, reluctantly, like I had ruined a plan she wasn't finished with. She muttered under her breath about how I should have told her before if I didn't want her making space. Making space? For what? For who? For how long? I let her out of the room, but she walked slowly, dragging her fingertips across the wall like she was memorizing the space. When she reached the lounge, she sat down calmly like nothing happened, smiling at me like we were about to watch a movie. I told her the date was over. Her smile didn't drop. She just said she understood it and that moving in too early sometimes scares people. Moving in. Those words felt like a punch. She stood up, grabbed her bag, and walked toward the door. But before she left, she turned back and said something that froze me. She said she'd be back next time with storage boxes. Not if. Not maybe. Next time. I told her flat out I'd come back. She didn't look angry. She just nodded slowly, like she was letting me have a little tantrum. Then she left. I locked the door instantly. My bedroom drawers were still half open. My shirts were stacked perfectly. The empty space she made for herself stared at me like a warning. Later that night, I checked the app. Her profile wasn't gone, but the chat was empty. She had deleted every message we'd ever sent, on her side only. Like she was resetting something. Starting fresh. Starting over. Preparing for next time. I didn't think anything weird would happen that day. It was supposed to be the most harmless type of meetup ever. A quick coffee at a cafe right off the high street. Public. Bright. Crowded. Zero risk. Honestly, I picked that exact spot so nothing strange could happen. I was tired of awkward dates and she seemed normal enough in chat. Funny. Chill. Not too intense. She even sent a voice note saying she hated overcomplicated plans and preferred something simple for a first meet. When I walked in, the cafe was busy but not packed. People are reading newspapers, tapping away on laptops, couples whispering over croissants. She was already sitting near the window, waving at me like we'd known each other for ages. She looked exactly like her pictures. Hoodie, messy ponytail, natural face, bright eyes. She seemed excited, bouncy even, like she genuinely wanted to be there. I sat across from her, and everything felt normal. She laughed easily, talked fast, complimented my jacket, asked random stuff about my day. Nothing off. Nothing strange. Except people were staring. Not everyone, but enough that I noticed it before my drink even arrived. A guy near the counter kept glancing at us. A girl behind me pretended to stir her drink forever while looking in our direction. Two teenagers kept whispering and pointing subtly. At first, I thought I had something on my face, or maybe they recognized her from somewhere. Influencer vibes maybe, but she didn't dress like one. She didn't notice any of it, or she pretended not to. Then I heard the first whisper, a girl behind me giggling under her breath, saying something like, "Wait till he sees the chat." I thought she was talking about her friend. No way it had anything to do with us. But the staring got worse. Then I noticed her phone. It wasn't lying flat like normal. It was propped up by her iced latte. Perfect angle. Camera facing us. Not pointed at her. Pointed at us. And the screen wasn't black. It was glowing. Full brightness. With a tiny scrolling chat on it. My chest tightened instantly. At first, I thought maybe she'd forgotten to lock it. Maybe a video was playing. Maybe I was overthinking. But the scrolling didn't stop. Words kept flooding up the screen in bright colors. Thousands of them. I leaned slightly, pretending to scratch my arm just enough to see it clearly. And everything in me dropped. She was live streaming. Not by accident. On purpose. The title on the screen, First DET, why take this guy, just METLL. The viewer count, 8,372. 8,000 people watching us. My stomach twisted so fast I almost stood up right away. She noticed me glance at her phone, but instead of panicking, she smiled, this tiny smug smile like she'd been waiting for me to realize. She tapped her screen casually, making the chat go even faster. I heard a notification sound from somewhere behind me. Someone in the cafe giggled. I froze. She kept talking to me like nothing was happening, asking questions, acting normal, but every few seconds her eyes flicked to the chat. My mind raced. I couldn't even process what she was saying anymore. I was hearing things like, tell him his hair looks like a helmet. Ask him how much he makes. OMG, he looks nervous. I'll may out look at his hands. Blink twice if he's boring. She wasn't just live streaming. She was reading the comments and playing along. It made my skin crawl. Every small movement I made, adjusting my sleeve, touching my cup, breathing too loudly, triggered more comments I could see flying across the screen. People analyzing me like I was some zoo animal. Some were cruel. Some were creepy. Some were straight up insane. I whispered her name, trying to get her attention quietly without causing a scene. She just smiled sweetly like she couldn't hear the panic in my voice. She acted like I was being dramatic. She even nudged the phone closer to her drink, making the angle even wider. More staring now. More whispers. People weren't confused anymore. They knew. Some of them were even watching the stream on their own phones. A guy at the far table lifted his phone slightly, and I saw the same stream on it. Same chat. Same frame. Me, her. The entire cafe behind us. That's when she leaned forward and whispered something so casually it made my stomach drop even more. She said her followers loved authentic reactions. Authentic reactions to what? Me realizing the world was watching. I felt my whole body tense. I looked around the room, and now everyone who knew what was happening was waiting. Watching. Waiting for me to freak out or get angry or run out. They were hungry for something dramatic to happen. I asked her quietly to turn it off. She didn't even blink. She just smiled wider and told me the stream was going crazy right now and that I looked so confused it was adorable. My heart was pounding so hard I felt lightheaded. More chats flew across the screen. Ask him if he's scared. Touch his hand randomly. Pretend you're crying. Tell him he's boring. Ask for his bank info lol. Is he gonna snap? It felt like my privacy had been ripped off my skin. And then a message popped up that made my blood run cold. Copes incoming. I didn't understand it at first. But then the door swung open. 2 officers walked in fast, scanning the room. One gestured toward our table. Someone had reported a distress call. Someone thought I was being filmed against my will. Someone recognized her and said she'd been warned before about streaming strangers without consent. When the officers reached us, she finally stopped smiling. They asked her to end the stream. She refused. Not angrily, stubbornly, like she genuinely believed she had the right to broadcast my life. Then one officer reached for her phone. That's when she snapped. She grabbed it and held it to her chest, shouting that they were ruining everything. That her viewers were expecting more. That I was being dramatic. That she wasn't hurting anyone. The entire cafe stared, stunned and horrified. The officers calmly asked again. She refused again. Then they took the phone gently but firmly, and I saw the stream end on the spot. Comments exploded in panic as the screen went dark in the officer's hand. She screamed at them to give it back. Proper full-body scream. Like someone ripped away her only lifeline. They escorted her out while she kicked and yelled that she'd just start another account. That they couldn't ban her forever. That she'd done nothing wrong. I sat there shaking, completely silent, heart racing like I'd just run a marathon. The officer asked if I was okay. I nodded, even though I wasn't. I left the cafe quietly, avoiding every pair of eyes that had been watching me through a screen minutes earlier. Later that night, I checked the app. Her profile was gone. But someone sent me a clip. A clip from the stream. Me sitting there clueless. 8,000 people laughing. And her caption. First date content as crazy. I'm not the outdoorsy type. I get tired walking upstairs, never mind climbing random hills for fun. But he kept saying the trail had a nice view and barely any people. And honestly, I just wanted to get out of the house and do something different. He seemed normal in the chat, calm, friendly, not weird at all, so I thought fine, one walk won't kill me. He picked a trail just outside town, the one everyone posts nice pictures of, but nobody actually explains how tiring it is. When he arrived, he looked exactly like his pics: backpack, thermos, proper hiking boots, even though the path was basically gravel. He was excited, more than I expected, like he'd been waiting for this all week. I figured he just loved nature or whatever. I didn't mind. At least he was easy to talk to. The first 10 minutes were peaceful. Birds, wind, the smell of trees, that awkward small talk where you pretend you don't notice how loud your breathing is. He kept slowing down for me, pointing out random mushrooms or leaves like he had a science documentary running in his head. He seemed harmless. But every few steps, he'd check his phone. Not casually, proper checking. Bright screen held low, thumb scrolling fast, eyes darting between the path and his notifications. I pretended not to notice because I didn't want the whole thing to turn awkward immediately. I figured he was just tracking the trail or using some hiking app. Then he did something weird. He kept glancing behind us. Not scared, not paranoid, just checking, over and over. And every time he looked back, he'd smile to himself a little, like he was relieved. I didn't understand it, but I didn't question it. People have habits. A little farther up, we passed two older hikers coming down the path. They nodded at us. He nodded back too eagerly. As soon as they walked past, he checked his phone again, fast, like he couldn't wait another second. I kept thinking maybe he was waiting for a message or his mom was texting, or he had some work emergency. Whatever. But then he stepped off the path slightly, pretending to tie his shoe, and I heard the faintest beep from his phone. Not a text sound. Something different, like a recorded noise or an alert. When he stood back up, his whole vibe changed. He started walking faster. Not too fast, just enough to make me feel like I needed to keep up. He kept scanning the trees, checking the sky, checking the ground like he was tracking time or distance. The hike didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt tense. We reached a small clearing where the path split into two. He told me we should take the left one because it was quieter. I didn't think anything of it. We walked a bit more, and the woods around us got thicker. No people. No sound except wind. And he kept checking his phone like every second mattered. I finally asked what he was doing. He shrugged it off and said he liked keeping track of the route. But his hands were shaking. We walked another 2 minutes before everything flipped. It started with voices. Not close enough to see anyone, but close enough that the tone was obvious. Serious. Rushed. Purposeful. I stopped walking instinctively. He didn't. He walked 2 more steps before realizing I wasn't moving. Then officers appeared through the trees. Not hiking clothes. High-vis gear. Radios. Gloves. They walked straight toward us like they already knew who they wanted. My stomach dropped instantly. He froze, phone still half in his hand. One officer called out his name. Not the name he gave me. A different one. He didn't answer. He just stared at the ground like everything had caught up at once. The officer repeated it louder, and now I recognized a shift in everyone's energy. They weren't stopping random hikers. They were stopping him. I stepped aside because my legs were turning to jelly. 2 officers told me I wasn't in trouble and to stay where I was. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear them. Then they told him to put the phone down. He hesitated. That's when one of the officers explained why they were there. He'd been fake reporting injured hikers on multiple trails. Not little pranks, full emergency level reports. He'd been messaging mountain rescue hotlines claiming people were hurt, stuck, bleeding, unconscious, giving exact coordinates, exact trail markers, exact fake details. Every time rescuers rushed to one location, he'd send another report to a second route to pull resources away. And while teams were scattered chasing his fake emergencies, he'd wander freely along quieter paths. They'd trace the calls. The pings lined up. His phone. His route. This trail. Today. He tried to deny it quietly, but the officers had logs, time-stamped, location matched. Multiple calls in 1 hour, all coming from the same device he held in his hand. He'd been sending them while walking next to me. Every time he slowed down, every time he pretended to tie his shoe, every time he let someone pass. He wasn't checking maps. He was checking which areas rescue teams had already been sent to. I stood there shaking because the truth hit me too hard. He only asked me on this hike so he'd look normal. So if someone spotted him on CCTV entering the trail, he'd look like just another person enjoying nature with a date. An alibi. A distraction. Meanwhile, emergency workers were sprinting across different trails for nothing. 2 officers grabbed his arms, cuffed him, and started escorting him down the path. He didn't resist. He didn't argue. He looked exhausted, like he'd been doing this longer than I'd ever know. Another officer walked me back toward the entrance. She explained gently that they'd been tracking him for weeks. They suspected he was doing it to exploit empty trails, maybe for theft, maybe for something else, maybe just for attention. They weren't sure yet, but today they caught him red-handed. My legs felt like they could give out any second. The forest felt heavier than before, like the trees were leaning in. Every rustle sounded wrong. By the time we reached the car park, I couldn't even speak properly. They took my name just to confirm I wasn't involved. Then they let me go. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I could even start the engine. I kept replaying everything, him smiling, him checking behind us, him tying his shoe every 10 steps, him pretending the hike was about bonding. It wasn't about bonding. It was about timing. He was using me as background noise for something he'd been doing long before I matched him. Later that night, his profile vanished. Not blocked. Gone. Like the whole account slipped into the woods with him. I'd been scrolling for days, half bored, half annoyed, and when she messaged saying she wanted to grab dessert, I said yes mostly because I was craving something sugary anyway. She picked this small dessert cafe on the corner of a quiet street, the type with pink lights, fake flowers on the walls, and menus full of waffles and overpriced milkshakes. It felt harmless, safe, typical. When I walked in, she was already sitting in one of the booths near the window. She waved at me with this bright grin, the kind of smile that looks like it was built to make people feel comfortable. She looked exactly like her pics too. Hoodie, messy bun. No overdone outfit, just chilled. She seemed genuinely excited to be there, tapping her spoon against an empty glass like she'd been counting the minutes. I sat down, and straight away she started talking about random things. How she loved dessert cafes. How she always ordered waffles with strawberries. How she hated savory food in general. Just silly stuff, but it made the conversation easy. Nothing suspicious at all. The cafe was warm, almost too warm, with the smell of melted chocolate everywhere. Kids were screaming happily at the table behind us. A group of teenagers were taking pictures of their milkshakes like they were rare paintings, and the workers were moving fast behind the counter, melting sauces and plating desserts nonstop. It was loud, chaotic, and strangely comforting. We ordered, and while we waited, she kept glancing toward the counter, not in a nervous way, more like she was analyzing something. She watched the workers like she was studying their routine. How many were in the kitchen? Who went in and out? Which desserts were being made? She even asked me randomly how I thought they stored ingredients. I laughed it off, thinking she was just curious because she liked baking. Then, out of nowhere, she excused herself and stood up. I thought she was going to the bathroom. She didn't take her bag, didn't look flustered, just walked away casually, hands in her hoodie pockets. But she didn't go to the bathroom. She walked straight toward the staff door. At first, I thought she made a mistake. The doors in those places always look the same from certain angles. Maybe she got confused. Maybe she didn't see the little sign that said staff only. Except she didn't hesitate when she reached it. She pushed it open and walked into the kitchen like she worked there. No pause, no knocking, no asking. She disappeared behind the door so casually that even the staff didn't react at first. I sat there stunned, holding my phone, blinking. I thought maybe she knew someone in the kitchen. Maybe she used to work there. Maybe she needed something urgently. I tried to convince myself it wasn't weird because I didn't want to assume I was on a date with a lunatic. Then a worker looked up from the counter and frowned. She whispered something to her coworker. He glanced toward me, confused, like he was trying to figure out if I was part of something. Another staff member opened the door slightly and peered inside, then shut it quickly with wide eyes. The atmosphere shifted. Not dramatically, just this quiet tension that spread across the cafe like the air tightened. A couple of staff started pacing. One went to the front door and locked it without saying anything. I'd only noticed because the handle clicked loudly in the silent part of the song playing. I looked around. People were still eating happily, completely unaware. Kids still laughing, teenagers still taking pictures of the same milkshake they'd already uploaded 10 times. But the staff weren't calm anymore. They were glancing at their phones, whispering, panicking quietly. Then the sound came. Not loud at first, just heavy footsteps outside the door. Fast, purposeful, sharp. Before I could process it, the front door shook with force. Then it burst open. Officers rushed in. Not one, not two, a whole group, straight through the entrance like they knew exactly where they needed to go. Chairs scraped, spoons dropped, kids stopped mid-laugh. Everyone froze. Except the staff. They pointed toward the kitchen immediately. The officers moved fast, pushing through the staff door, shouting instructions into the back. I couldn't see anything past the swinging door, but I heard chaos, clattering pans, someone yelling, something falling over. One officer came out gripping a bag full of something. It looked heavy. Another officer followed, holding her by the wrist. Then I saw her face. She wasn't crying. She wasn't scared. She looked annoyed, like she'd been interrupted doing something important. The officers didn't drag her. They kept her steady, guiding her toward the front. The entire cafe watched in silence. Her hoodie sleeve slid up slightly, revealing smudges of flour on her arm. I didn't understand any of it until the manager, shaken and out of breath, announced loudly for the staff to check what was missing. Missing? Missing what? Turns out for months, someone had been breaking into restaurant kitchens across the area. Not stealing money. Not vandalizing anything. Just taking ingredients. Bags of flour, boxes of fruit, tubs of chocolate, whole trays of pastries, expensive syrups. Gone overnight. No forced entry. No smashed locks. Whoever it was slipped in whenever staff were distracted, grabbing whatever they could before vanishing. They had CCTV of a woman in a hoodie slipping into kitchens across 3 different cafes. Always moving fast. Always knowing exactly where the storage was. Always leaving before anyone noticed. And that night, they tracked her. Someone had recognized her from earlier CCTV stills. A staff member at one of the restaurants she hit was working a temp shift at this dessert cafe. He saw her face when she walked in with me. Didn't realize immediately, but when she disappeared into the kitchen, that's when it clicked. He called the police quietly. They arrived fast. And she already filled her hoodie pockets with bags of sugar, bars of baking chocolate, and a tub of strawberries she grabbed from the fridge. All I was sitting calmly at the table thinking she was getting napkins. They cuffed her gently and took her out through the door. Before she stepped out, she glanced at me with this almost apologetic smile, not embarrassed, just a small shrug like she knew this night wasn't going to end any other way. Like she'd accepted it way before they even showed up. I sat there alone with 2 untouched desserts melting on the table, surrounded by strangers staring at me like I should have known. The manager came over, apologized for the scene, and said I didn't have to pay. I left without finishing anything. The air outside felt colder than it should. The street looked normal, cars, lights, people walking, but it felt like I had stepped out of someone else's story. Later that night, I checked the app. Her profile was gone. Not unmatched. Gone. Wiped. Like she only existed for that 1 hour at the dessert cafe, long enough to steal ingredients one last time before everything caught up with her. I wasn't planning anything crazy that night. I had a long week, my head felt fried, and all I wanted was something low effort where I didn't have to act like a social genius. He messaged me asking if I wanted to come over for a movie night. Normally I'd say no because going to someone's flat too soon can feel weird, but he'd been normal, calm, nothing pushy, nothing creepy. He sent his address, said he'd grab snacks, and promised it would be chill. I got there around 8. His building wasn't dodgy or anything. Just a regular block of flats with flickering hallway lights and that old carpet smell you get in places where the landlord doesn't care enough to update things. When he opened the door, he looked exactly the same as his profile. Hoodie, joggers, hair slightly messy but in a nice way. He seemed excited in an awkward, cute way, not intense. His flat was small but tidy. Sofa, small coffee table, cheap TV stand, fairy lights around the curtain rail, some random posters on the wall that didn't match each other at all. It smelled like popcorn mixed with fabric softener. Nothing creepy jumped out at me. The weirdness started slow, almost too subtle to notice. He kept checking a little device on the table. It looked like one of those tiny portable routers, but it had wires dangling from it that didn't look like they belonged to anything. He would tap it, look at a little blinking light, then pretend he wasn't paying attention to it. The first time I saw him do it, he didn't even realize I'd noticed. We sat down, turned on the TV, scrolled through choices. He kept insisting we should stream something instead of watching anything downloaded. He grabbed the remote, leaned forward, and kept refreshing the connection page like he was waiting for something specific to pop up. I asked if the Wi-Fi was acting up. He laughed too quickly and said his signal wasn't great sometimes. I didn't think about it. Flats always have annoying Wi-Fi problems. But then he kept opening a list of nearby networks. Not once. Not twice. Pretty much every few minutes. He'd stare at the names, check something on his phone, and then wait. It was like he was expecting one of them to appear or disappear. He wasn't even subtle. He kept doing it even with me sitting right next to him. I tried focusing on the movie, but it was impossible not to notice. His leg was bouncing. His eyes flicked between the TV and the list of networks like he was running two separate missions at once. Every time a network name changed from secure to open, even for a second, he would sit up a little straighter. At one point, he plugged in that weird device and the lights on it blinked faster. He covered it with a napkin like he didn't want me to see it. The whole thing felt off, but not in a horror movie jump scare way. More like he was doing something sneaky, something he wasn't supposed to be doing. He told me the snack drawer was in the kitchen and asked me to grab the sweets he left on top of the fridge. When I got up, I noticed his laptop screen was open on the counter. Not fully open, but enough that I could see rows of symbols and numbers. It looked like code or some kind of dashboard. I didn't understand any of it, but the screen definitely wasn't for casual browsing. I grabbed the snacks and sat back down, trying to act normal, but that uneasy feeling wouldn't leave. He kept staring at his little device, waiting for the lights to go green. I finally asked what it was for, and he brushed it off, saying it helped his connection run faster. Then he changed the subject faster than I could blink. 10 minutes later, everything snapped into chaos. It started with a loud knock, not a normal knock, the type you hear in crime shows. Heavy, demanding, sharp. My whole body went stiff instantly. He froze too. Completely froze. His face dropped like all the blood left it. Before he could even stand up, another knock hit the door, harder, louder, followed by voices shouting through it. Not angry voices, but official ones. Firm, clear, saying something about it opening up. He panicked. Fully panicked. He grabbed the little device, tried to shove it under the sofa cushion, dropped it, grabbed it again, then looked around like he couldn't decide where to hide it. He muttered something under his breath and unplugged it so fast the lights flickered around us. The banging got louder. The voices got louder. One of them shouted his full name. My entire chest tightened. I didn't know what he'd done, but the way the officers were calling him out meant it wasn't some casual misunderstanding. He didn't move toward the door. He didn't ask who it was. He just looked at me with this guilty expression, like he knew the night was already over and there was no point pretending. When he finally opened the door, officers rushed inside immediately. 2 came straight to him. 1 came toward the living room. Another headed toward the kitchen. They moved like they had a blueprint of the whole flat. I sat on the sofa frozen, clutching the snack bag like an idiot. An officer asked me gently to stay seated and if I felt safe. I nodded, even though my brain was spinning so fast I felt dizzy. Then they told him why they were there. They had been tracking an illegal Wi-Fi tapping set. Someone had been intercepting data packets from multiple flats in the building. Bank logins, messages, emails, anything people typed while connected. The signal bounced around but kept leading back to one specific unit. His unit. They'd been monitoring the traffic for days. Tonight the signal was strongest it had ever been and came directly from his lounge. My heart sank when one officer picked up the tiny device he tried to hide. It wasn't a router. It was a signal sniffer, a device used to hijack local networks and reroute information through an external source. He hadn't been having Wi-Fi issues. He was stealing the neighbors' connections, reading their data, piggybacking off anything he could find. He even had a list of network names on his laptop, half cracked open, half in progress. Some marked with notes, some marked with passwords he'd already pulled. I felt sick, completely sick, because I had been sitting next to him while he did it. Because he had asked me to come over on a night my guess's little operation was busiest. Because the entire time I thought he was acting slightly awkward, he was actually monitoring which neighbor he was stealing from at that moment. They cuffed him quietly. He didn't resist. He didn't plead. He didn't even look surprised. He just stared down at the carpet like he'd been caught doing the exact thing he knew would catch up eventually. They asked me a few questions. How long I'd been there, if I saw him using the device, if I knew what it was. I told them everything I could remember. They nodded and said I wasn't in trouble. When they took him out, he didn't look back at me. Not even once. I left the flat with an officer escorting me out because my legs were shaking too badly. The hallway felt colder than it did earlier. The building felt different, darker. And all I could think about was how easily I could have been sitting there, clueless, while he tapped into strangers' private lives. I deleted his number instantly. Deleted the app. Deleted everything. I still think about the blinking light on that device. The way he pretended it was nothing. The way he kept checking the neighbors' networks like he was waiting for them to slip. I woke up late, scrolled my phone, almost canceled the date twice, then forced myself to get dressed because I was tired of wasting weekends doing nothing. She suggested meeting at the park near the lake, the one with the old wooden benches and the ducks that always chase people for food. It sounded chill. No pressure, just a normal meetup. She got there before me. I spotted her sitting on a bench near the big tree that leans slightly to the right, the one everyone uses as a landmark. She looked calm, sitting with her legs crossed, fingers tapping lightly on the bench like she was trying to distract herself. When she saw me, she smiled softly, kind of shy but comfortable enough that the greeting didn't feel forced. Her pictures matched perfectly. Hoodie, jeans, clean face, simple vibe. She didn't look stressed or uncomfortable. If anything, she looked relieved I showed up. She said she didn't like indoor places much and preferred meeting outside. I figured she meant she liked nature or whatever. I didn't dig deeper. We started talking just small things at first. How her day was, where she grew up, random stuff about music and food. Her voice was steady, but her eyes kept darting across the park like she was watching for something. Not paranoid, but alert, aware, like she'd spent years training herself to scan an area without thinking about it. I thought she was just one of those anxious types who need to know their surroundings. Her smile made up for it. It was soft, almost worn out, like someone who'd been tired for a long time but still tried to enjoy things. She kept asking me questions too. Not personal ones, just little ones. What I liked to do, what kind of job I had if I traveled much. Every time I answered, she nodded slowly like she was collecting information carefully. I didn't mind. It actually made the date flow easier. The park around us was peaceful. Kids feeding ducks. A couple jogging. A man walking his dog. Sunlight shining through the branches in that way that makes you tempted to take a photo even though it never looks the same on camera. Everything felt normal. Until it didn't. It started with two people walking onto the path at the same time. Not together, but close enough that it looked weird. One from the left entrance, one from the right. Both wearing dark jackets, hands tucked away, walking straight, not looking around. It didn't make sense at first. The park wasn't that type of place. People usually wandered, looked down at their phones, or drifted around without aim. These two weren't wandering. They were approaching with purpose. She noticed before I did. Her shoulders tightened instantly. Her hand froze mid-air when she was gesturing at something. Her whole face dropped like her breath got stuck. She didn't turn her head. She didn't panic. She just whispered a tiny, "oh no," under her breath, barely loud enough to hear. I asked what was wrong. She didn't answer. She just stared straight ahead, eyes wide, lips slightly parted like she'd just seen her past walking toward her. Then a third officer appeared from behind the tree line. Then a fourth near the playground. Then a fifth farther down the path. They all seemed to appear at once, spreading out around the park like they had memorized her exact location. I looked at her again, confused, expecting her to react, to deny anything, to explain something. But she just sat there still, frozen stiff, hands gripping her knee like she was bracing for impact. One officer called her name. Not the name she told me. A completely different name. She flinched so hard I knew instantly it was hers. My stomach twisted. I didn't understand it. I didn't know if she was in trouble, if she owed someone something, if she had a stalker, if this was some mix-up. But when she finally looked at me, her expression said everything. She whispered quietly that she needed me to stay calm. Her voice cracked. She said she wasn't dangerous. She said she didn't want me to panic. She said she was sorry. Sorry for what? Before I could respond, the officers came closer. Their steps were heavy but controlled. One of them spoke calmly, telling her not to move. Another stepped behind me but didn't touch me, just kept an eye on the whole area. People nearby froze. Parents grabbed their kids. A jogger slowed down, confused. The dog walker stopped mid-stride. The entire park looked like it had paused just for this moment, like everyone sensed something big was happening but didn't know what. The officer said her real name again. She closed her eyes. Then they told her she had been reported missing. Missing. Reported missing by her family. Not recently. For months. Possibly longer. One officer explained that her family filed reports saying she vanished from her hometown without warning. Her bank activities stopped. She left her phone behind. She changed her hair. She disappeared. They believed something bad happened to her because she had cut all ties so suddenly. They had been investigating it quietly, looking for her image in public spaces, watching for matches using newer CCTV software. They found her. And she wasn't using her real name anymore. She had a whole new identity, a new alias, new socials, new picture, new everything. A life built from scratch, a person rebuilt out of nothing. She didn't fight them. She didn't argue. She didn't deny anything. She just sat still, tears filling her eyes, whispering that she wasn't ready to go back, that she had left for a reason, that she didn't want her past life touching her again. She didn't say what happened or why she ran, not even a hint, but the way she looked at the officers, the way her shoulders curled in, the way her breathing shook, it wasn't the look of someone guilty. It was the look of someone scared of her own history. When she finally stood up, her legs looked weak like they might give out. She glanced at me once more, this tiny apologetic look that said she wished she could explain but didn't have time. She didn't look angry or broken or dangerous. She looked tired. Tired in a way that didn't come from one bad night, but years of running from something I would probably never understand. The officers escorted her away gently, not forcefully. They talked to her quietly, almost softly, like they knew she wasn't harmful. People watched from a distance, whispering, confused but curious. I sat frozen on the bench long after they left. The park felt normal again, sunlight, ducks, joggers, but that bench felt like a crime scene of a life I wasn't meant to witness. Later that night, I checked her profile. Gone. Not deleted, vanished, like it had never been there. Like her whole identity was smoke that got blown away once the truth caught up to her. I still don't know why she ran. I don't know if she went back home, or if she begged them to let her stay hidden, or if she's somewhere else now starting over again. All I know is that I met a stranger living a life she wasn't supposed to live, sitting calmly on a bench moments before her entire world caught up to her. I'd had a long week. My head hurt from staring at screens too much, and I kept telling myself to just cancel and stay home. But he seemed all right in the chats. Calm, friendly, not pushing anything weird, just asking normal questions about my day. He suggested grabbing drinks at this small bar near the center of town. It wasn't fancy, but it had nice lighting and didn't smell like old beer like half the places around here. I figured, fine, it's public, loud enough that I won't feel awkward, quick enough that I can leave early if he's boring. When I got there, the bar was dim and warm, the type of lighting that made everyone look slightly more attractive than they probably were. People were laughing, music was low, and the air smelled like fruit and citrus from all the cocktails being made. I spotted him at a small table near the back. He stood up fast when he saw me, smiling like he'd been waiting for ages. He looked normal. That was the first thing I noticed. Just a jacket, simple shirt, hair neat, no weird expression or creepy vibe. He talked smoothly and didn't seem nervous. He ordered drinks for us, and I remember thinking it was nice not to deal with awkward silence for once. It felt easy. Too easy maybe, but I didn't think about that then. We sat down, and he kept leaning forward like he wanted to make sure he could hear me over the music. He asked questions about my job, my hobbies, stupid little things people talk about when they're trying to break the ice. I didn't think anything was wrong. Not even a little bit. He didn't check his phone, didn't look around too much, didn't do anything that set off alarms in my head. The first red flag only appeared when he tried to insist on ordering the next round himself. I told him I wanted to grab it because I felt bad he paid the first one. He laughed it off, but his eyes didn't match his voice. It looked tense. He kept trying to push the drink menu closer to me, saying I should pick something stronger. When I said I'd just get a soft drink next, he paused for a second too long. The smile dropped, then came back, but not naturally. Still, I ignored it. I told myself he was just trying to be old school and pay for everything. Lots of guys do that. I wasn't going to accuse him of anything crazy based on one weird pause. But then he kept watching my glass. Every time I lifted it, his eyes followed it. When I placed it back down, he would adjust the coaster slightly like he wanted it in a certain spot. It was small stuff, nothing massive, but enough to poke at the back of my mind. When he went to the bathroom, he lingered behind me for a second before walking away. Not in a creepy way, just long enough that I noticed. I told myself I was being dramatic. The bar was getting louder and busier. A group of friends crowded near the front, laughing. A couple danced near the jukebox. Staff were moving fast behind the counter. It all felt normal. Safe. Then everything flipped in a single moment. The music stopped. Not slowly, not fading out. It just cut like someone pulled the cable out of the speakers. People went quiet, instantly confused. One bartender dropped the glass he was drying. Another locked eyes with the bouncer at the door. I thought maybe they were closing early or someone spilled something dangerous. But then I heard the sound that made my stomach twist. This heavy, metallic click coming from the entrance. It locked the front doors. Proper locked. Deadbolt. Key turned. My date didn't react at all. He just kept staring at his drink, rotating the glass slightly between his fingers like he was waiting for something. The bouncer walked toward the back of the bar with two members of staff following behind him. One was holding a folder. Another was pointing discreetly toward our table. My heart started racing because their eyes weren't scanning the room. They were locked on him. Only him. Before I could even ask what was going on, the bouncer stopped right next to our table. He wasn't rude. He wasn't loud. But his face was stone-cold serious. Staff stood behind him, whispering urgently. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught certain words. His name. Band. Incident. CCTV. 2 victims. Last month. Door staff report. Recognized too late. I felt the blood drain from my face. My date didn't even pretend to be confused. He didn't act shocked or defensive. He didn't move. He just looked at the table like he'd read the ending of the story already and accepted it. Staff asked him to stand. He didn't. The bouncer repeated himself, firmer this time. My date finally lifted his head slowly, like his neck was stiff. He didn't look at me. Not once. He didn't apologize. Didn't explain. He just looked tired and cornered, like someone who'd been running from something for too long. When he finally stood up, the folder in the staff member's hand opened slightly. I saw images inside. Screenshots from CCTV. Grainy but clear enough. Him sitting at this exact bar weeks earlier. Him passing drinks to different women. Him placing something in a glass when the bartender turned around. Him being escorted out by security months ago, but apparently using different names on different nights to sneak in again. He'd been banned for drugging people. And security only realized who he was after scanning the cameras in real time and comparing them to the old incident reports. He had already ordered 1 drink for me tonight. He had tried to order the next one too. When security grabbed his arm, he still didn't fight. He just let them take him away quietly, walking with his head down toward the back door staff used. Not the front. The back. Away from everyone else. Away from me. People around us whispered. Some stared at me like I had brought him on purpose. Others shook their heads like this wasn't the first time they'd seen something dark go down in a bar. A bartender came over and took my glass away without asking. She apologized softly, saying they locked the doors to stop him from running or dragging anyone else with him. She said I wasn't in trouble, but I needed to stay a moment so someone could explain the situation. I nodded, but my hands were shaking so badly I had to put them under the table. When I finally walked out, after they unlocked the doors again, The air outside felt colder than it should have been. Everything on the street looked normal. Cars driving past, people laughing outside another bar, music playing somewhere down the road. But I kept replaying one thing over and over. He didn't look surprised when they took him. He looked like he'd been waiting for it to happen again. I thought maybe this one wouldn't end up like all the others. She sent me her location and asked if I could grab her from the car park outside the small row of shops near her place. I didn't question it. People do weird meetup spots all the time. The evening didn't even feel strange when I left my house. The sky was that washed out early night blue and the roads were quiet. I remember thinking the whole thing felt too calm, like the type of night where nothing goes wrong for once. I even had music on, proper relaxed, windows cracked slightly because the air was warm. When I pulled into the car park, it wasn't busy at all. Just a few cars scattered around, a flickering lamp in the far corner, and small shops with their shutters halfway down. She stood near the middle, next to one of those trolley shelters. She waved when she saw my car, smiling like she'd been waiting. She looked exactly like her pictures, which was already a win. Hoodie, leggings, hair tied back, bag hanging from one shoulder. She hopped to the passenger seat fast, almost too fast. She shut the door, smiled, and said she was starving. Nothing weird at first. She smelled faintly like perfume mixed with something sharp, like metal or cleaning spray, but I ignored it. I pulled out of the space slowly, trying to start a normal conversation. But then she kept turning her head and scanning the car park through the window, like checking if someone was watching. She did it 3 times in 10 seconds. I laughed awkwardly and asked if she saw someone she knew. She didn't really answer. She just told me to drive out quicker. I brushed it off as nerves. Maybe she didn't like being picked up in public. Maybe she'd had bad dates before. I didn't want to assume anything negative. But when I turned toward the exit, I saw movement in the corner of my eye. Not one person. Multiple. Figures emerging slowly from behind different cars and from the walkway near the shops. My chest tightened instantly. They weren't random people. They were officers. At least 6 of them, dressed in gear, hands ready, moving with purpose. I barely had time to process it before one of them raised a hand, signaling for me to stop the car. She froze. Fully froze. Her smile vanished instantly. Her hands gripped her bag like she was trying to crush it. She wouldn't even look at me. She stared dead ahead like the air outside the windscreen was collapsing. I stopped the car because obviously I had no choice. Officers surrounded us on both sides before I could even ask what was happening. One was already speaking into her radio. Another was shining a torch at my plates. A third one came straight to her window and tapped on it firmly. She didn't roll it down. Her breathing sped up. Her leg bounced uncontrollably. She whispered something under her breath, not words I could make out. She looked like she was trying to calculate 20 escape routes at once. The officer tapped again, louder this time, telling her to open the door. She didn't move. I reached to unlock it for her because I didn't want things to escalate, but she slapped my hand away so fast I jerked back in shock. Her eyes were wide, terrified, but also guilty, like she knew exactly why they were there. The officer pulled the door open himself. She didn't fight, but she did grip the seat like she didn't want to step out. Another officer leaned in and told me to keep my hands visible. I wasn't even scared for myself at that point. I was stuck on the fact that she was shaking like someone who'd been caught doing something hours earlier. When they finally got her out of the car, everything clicked in the worst way. Another officer approached my side of the car and asked if I knew what she had been doing before I got there. I said no. Obviously, I had no clue. He nodded, almost like he expected that answer. Then he told me she had been captured on multiple CCTV cameras vandalizing cars in the same car park less than 20 minutes before I arrived. Not minor stuff either. She'd been scratching paint, snapping wing mirrors, driving something sharp across doors, even smashing one headlight with what looked like a key or a small tool. She walked up and down the rows calmly, like she'd been waiting for someone or checking for something. Then she stopped, leaned against the trolley shelter, and messaged me to say she was ready. I sat there stunned, staring through the windscreen, replaying her wave, her smile, her quick steps toward my car. She'd acted completely normal, even excited. Meanwhile, the officers had been reviewing footage, looking for her, recognizing her clothes, checking which direction she walked, then following her across the car park in real time. When one officer finally grabbed her arms gently but firmly to cuff her, She looked at the ground, mumbling something like she hadn't meant for anyone to catch her. She didn't look confused or wrongly accused. She looked caught, fully caught. People from the nearby flats had come out onto balconies to watch. A man standing next to a scratched-out car pointed directly at her, shouting that he'd read the damage only minutes before. Another woman came running from the shop door, yelling that someone had slashed her tire. The description matched her perfectly. I sat in the car feeling stupid. Proper stupid. I'd shown up thinking I was picking up someone normal. Meanwhile, she'd been going up and down the rows vandalizing random cars like she was working through a list in her head. No motive. No clear target. Just some kind of anger or obsession she never mentioned in the chat. When they placed her in the back of the police van, she finally glanced at me. Not apologetic. Not desperate. Just hollow. Like she wasn't even fully present in her own skin. The officer told me I was free to go, but to wait a minute so they could finish confirming I wasn't involved. I sat there gripping the steering wheel with sweaty hands, feeling that the world had gone sideways in 20 seconds. As I drove away, I kept replaying everything. Her rushing into the car. The way she kept scanning the area. The smell on her clothes. The way her hands trembled when she tightened her grip on the bag. It all made sense now, but at the time it had blended into the usual awkwardness of a first date. I checked the app later that night. Her profile was gone. Completely gone. No trace. No chat history, like she was never there. Probably deleted by someone, or maybe she did it earlier knowing she wouldn't be using it after tonight. I didn't even tell my friends the full story. Every part of it felt unreal. Just knowing I'd stopped my car right in the middle of her getaway without knowing anything made my stomach drop all over again. I didn't even want to go out that night. I'd been sitting at home in my hoodie, scrolling through random videos and trying to decide if I should just order food and call it a day. Then he messaged me asking if I wanted to finally meet for dinner. He'd been normal all week in chat. Nothing weird, nothing creepy, just basic conversations that didn't drain my brain. I figured whatever. It's a restaurant in town, public, loud enough that I wouldn't need to force conversation. I got ready fast and left before I changed my mind. The place he picked wasn't fancy or anything. Just one of those dim restaurants with hanging lights and wooden tables and people laughing loudly every 5 seconds. When I walked in, he was already there at a 2-seater table against the wall. He stood up, smiled, pulled out my chair like he was trying to be charming. He looked exactly like his pictures, which honestly shocked me because I'd already dealt with enough people who lied about their height or used angles that made them look like a different species. At first, it felt normal. We ordered drinks, looked at the menu, did the whole small talk thing. But halfway through the first 10 minutes, he started doing something that immediately annoyed me. He kept looking down, not just glancing at his phone, fully texting under the table like he was hiding something. His head would bob slightly, his eyes lock on his lap, and his thumbs moved like he was in the middle of a group chat. He'd look up for 1 second, smile, nod, pretend he was listening to me, then go right back to texting. I told myself he was probably dealing with work stuff or maybe someone was bothering him. I tried not to make it awkward by calling it out, so I just kept talking, even though my brain was screaming that he wasn't listening to a single thing I said. He wasn't even being subtle. At one point, he tilted his wrist so far that I saw the screen light reflect on the glass of water in front of him. The more he texted, the more stiff he got. His breathing got a bit quicker. His shoulders stayed tense like he was uncomfortable sitting still too long. He tapped his foot. Checked the time twice. He wouldn't put the phone on the table, no matter what. He kept it locked between his knees or half hidden under his jacket. The food came out and he barely touched his plate. He stabbed at it a bit, pushed it around, took 3 bites and stopped. The whole time, his hand never fully left his phone. I tried to look around the restaurant to distract myself. People were eating, talking, living their normal lives. Nothing around us felt dangerous or dramatic. It was just him acting weird. Then it got even stranger. He started wiping his hands constantly, like his palms were sweating. He kept glancing at the entrance. Not in a nervous date way, but like he was expecting someone to walk in. He flinched every time someone laughed loudly or a waiter walked too close to our table. He wasn't scared of me or the date. He was scared of something else. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't. Every time he pressed the phone under the table, the whole table shifted slightly. He was texting fast, like he was timing something. I didn't want to overthink it, but something about the way he kept checking the door made my stomach twist. The restaurant was getting louder as more people came in. I kept trying to focus on my food, but the atmosphere around our table felt wrong. He wouldn't talk much. He kept glancing downward, breathing weirdly, thumbs moving nonstop. He kept brushing his hair back and adjusting his shirt like he was overeating. Then he whispered something to himself, something like a countdown. I didn't catch the exact words, but it sounded like he was tracking minutes. That's when I knew something was off in a way that didn't feel normal. He checked the time again, then once more, like every second mattered to him. Before I could ask him anything, the restaurant reacted. It didn't happen gradually. It wasn't like in movies when people see something suspicious. It was instant. The front door burst open and multiple officers rushed in at the same time. Not walking. Running. One shouted something to the staff. Another pointed toward the back of the restaurant. People froze with forks halfway their mouths. A couple screamed. Chairs slid back. The waiters stepped aside like they already knew not to get involved. He dropped his fork. His entire face went pale. His hand slammed down on his pocket like he was trying to hide the phone even deeper. He didn't blink. Didn't move. Didn't even breathe right. His whole body stiffened like he'd been caught in the middle of something. One officer pointed directly at our table. My heart stopped. They came straight toward us. Not checking other tables. Not scanning the room. They knew exactly where they were going. He lowered his head like a kid getting told off in school. He didn't try to run or talk. He just froze there, gripping his jacket like it was the only thing holding him up. The officers grabbed him and pulled him out of the chair so fast his drink spilled across the table. The glass rolled off and shattered on the floor. People gasped. Someone yelled to get their child out of the way. The restaurant turned into chaos instantly. He didn't fight. He just kept his head down while they cuffed him. One officer took his phone and scrolled through it right in front of me. The screen was filled with messages, maps, instructions, pictures of a house lit up by a street lamp, and two people wearing dark clothes standing outside someone's window. My stomach flipped so hard I thought I was going to pass out. Another officer explained quietly while chaos exploded around us. They'd been tracking someone coordinating a burglary through live messages while pretending to be out somewhere else. Someone had reported suspicious activity at a house across town. When officers got there, they found texts mentioning the exact same table layout of the restaurant I was sitting in. He'd been updating two people breaking into a property, telling them when the homeowners left, when the street was empty, even giving them directions based on traffic camera feeds he had pulled up. He didn't match with me for a date. He matched with me to create an alibi. The texts under the table weren't normal texting. He was hemming every move of two people who were inside someone else's home at that exact moment. They dragged him out of the restaurant while everyone stared at me like I was somehow part of it. One officer stayed behind to ask me a few questions, but I barely heard any of it. My ears were ringing. My chest felt tight. I kept staring at the broken glass on the floor because looking at anything else made me feel sick. When I walked outside, the street was filled with flashing lights. I saw them put him in the back of a van. He didn't look at me once. He didn't say a single word. Later that night, I found out from the news that the people he was texting ran as soon as the officers stormed the house. One was caught. One wasn't. And he'd coordinated the whole thing while sitting across from me pretending he was on a normal dinner date. I blocked the app after that for a long time. Every time I sit in a restaurant now, I check people's hands way more than I should. I only said yes because my week felt boring and she seemed fun in the chat. She picked the bowling alley herself, saying she liked places with loud music so the awkwardness didn't hit as hard. I agreed because honestly, bowling felt low pressure. You don't need to think too much. You just roll a ball and pretend you know what you're doing. When I arrived, the place was packed. Kids running around, groups shouting every time they got a strike, the smell of chips and cheap pizza everywhere. She waved at me from the seating area near lane 14, smiling like she'd been excited about the whole thing. She looked normal. Hoodie, jeans, hair tied up. Nothing suspicious at all. She gave me this quick side hug, grabbed her bag, and told me she'd already sorted our lane. The alley was loud but in a fun way, the kind where you feel like you're part of something even if it's just people hitting bowling pins. We put on those ugly shoes, picked out the heaviest ball we could pretend to handle, and started playing. She went first and absolutely launched the ball like she was in a competition. It smashed into the pins so hard that even the people next to us looked over. She laughed and did this little victory dance that made me think she was just one of those chaotic but fun girls. I didn't suspect anything weird, not even a little bit. Every time she walked back to the seats, she would adjust her bag. I thought she just didn't want it falling over. I didn't pay attention. I was too busy trying not to embarrass myself by sending the ball straight into the gutter. Between turns, she kept leaning over the little side barrier, acting nosy about what people on the lanes next to us were doing. She'd laugh at their form, copy their movements, or make jokes about them taking it too seriously. She looked confident, relaxed, fully enjoying the date. I didn't see a single red flag, even though she kept glancing around a bit too much. I assumed she was just one of those people who liked people watching. At one point, she said she needed to grab napkins because she spilled some drink on her sleeve. She walked off towards the snack bar with her bag. 2 minutes later, she came back smiling, tossing her hair back like nothing happened. I joked that she took ages for napkins. She just shrugged and took her turn again. Things were normal, literally normal. But something about her pacing started to change. She'd get up randomly, walk toward the back of the lane, pretend to look at the scoreboard, then wander a little too close to other people's stuff. I didn't notice it clearly. I saw her move around, but since the alley was crowded, people were constantly walking around anyway. Nothing looked out of place. A couple of teenagers 2 lanes down started complaining loudly about their missing phone. They were checking under chairs, bags, shoes, the ball return, even asking their friend if he was messing with them. I glanced over but didn't think much of it. People lose things in bowling alleys all the time. I kept playing, missing more shots than I'd like to admit. Then another couple further down the row started looking for something too. The girl was checking under the benches. The guy was patting every pocket he had. They weren't loud, but they definitely looked stressed. I thought maybe the alley just had bad lighting and people misplace stuff more when it's noisy. My date didn't look shocked or concerned. She didn't even look interested. She just asked if it was my turn and told me to hurry up so we could finish the game before the group next to us arrived for their booking. The thing is, she paced a lot. Every time she got up, her bag went with her. She never left it. Not once. Even when she stood 2 meters away from me watching me bowl, she had the strap wrapped around her arm. I didn't catch on. Not until everything exploded at the same time. I was lining up my next shot when the entire place went weirdly quiet for half a second. Not silent, but stiff, like someone turned the atmosphere down. I thought I imagined it, but then I saw security walking through the entrance in a straight line. Not rushing, not panicking, but moving with purpose. 3 staff members followed behind them, scanning each lane quickly. Nobody reacted at first. People thought maybe someone spilled a drink or a kid wandered off. But the way they walked made my stomach tighten. They weren't looking for a kid. They weren't looking for a spill. They were looking for someone. My date froze when she noticed them. Her whole vibe changed instantly. No more jokes, but more bouncing around. She clutched her bag tighter and sat down slowly, like she was trying to make herself invisible. I didn't understand anything yet, but something felt wrong. Proper wrong. Security went 1 lane at a time asking questions. I heard something about missing phones. I heard the word tracking. One of the staff members pointed toward our side of the building. Another whispered something into their walkie. Then they reached us. The guard looked at me first, probably because I was standing up with a ball in my hands. He asked if I had lost anything. I shook my head. Then he asked her. She didn't answer fast enough. Her eyes flicked to the exit behind him. She held her bag so close to her chest that it looked like she was trying to hide behind it. The guard asked if she could open her bag. She said no. Everything stopped. People around us turned their heads like the world suddenly zoomed in on our lane. Another guard stepped beside her. He didn't raise his voice. He just repeated the question. She kept hugging the bag tighter. Then one of the staff members spoke into their earpiece again and said something that made the guard step forward. I stood there frozen, still holding the bowling ball like an idiot. Security told her to stand up. She didn't. She just shook her head, mumbling something under her breath. They asked again. She stood up slowly, eyes darting around, body stiff like she wanted to run but knew she couldn't. When they took the bag out of her hands, she didn't fight. She just lowered her head. They opened it. I don't know what I expected to see. Gum wrappers. Makeup. A wallet. Something normal. But they pulled out a phone. Then another. Then another. Phones stacked on phones, some still lighting up with notifications. People from the lanes around us recognized their cases immediately. Someone gasped. Someone else cursed under their breath. One of the teenagers walked forward, pointing at the purple case they'd been looking for. Another couple stepped up because they saw theirs too. My date didn't say a word. She just stared at the floor like she was somewhere else. Security moved fast. They escorted her toward the back hallway while she kept her head down. People whispered. Some recorded. Others just stared at me like I brought her personally to rob the entire building. I stood there frozen, still holding the ball, feeling like the dumbest person alive. They asked me a couple of questions after she was taken away. How I knew her, how long I'd been with her, whether I saw anything. I answered everything honestly. I barely knew her. I was just there to bowl. When they cleared me to leave, I walked out embarrassed and confused. I kept replaying the date in my head. Every time she wandered off. Every time she adjusted her bag. Every time she positioned herself near someone else's stuff while pretending to stretch or change balls. She wasn't excited about bowling. She was working. And I was her cover. He messaged me saying the weather looked all right and asked if I wanted to go on a small walk near the park. I didn't really know him well, but his profile looked calm and normal. Nothing flashy. He seemed laid back, and I honestly just wanted to get out of my house before I started pacing like a stressed hamster. I threw on something simple and drove out of the spot he picked. It was one of those quiet places with a long path stretching behind rows of small houses, the kind of area where dog walkers and old couples pass through every hour. When I pulled up, he was already waiting by the bench near the entrance. He looked exactly like his pictures, which surprised me because that barely ever happens. He waved, smiling in a relaxed way, and for a moment I thought maybe this date would just be a peaceful walk and nothing stressful. We started walking slowly, talking about random stuff. He told me little things about where he worked, his routine, the boring things people talk about when they're trying to fill space. He didn't seem nervous or weird, but every few minutes he'd look over fences or check the corners of gardens like he was looking for a shortcut. I didn't pay attention at first. Some people just wandered with their eyes more than their feet. I didn't want to overthink it. The path ran behind a row of houses with tall wooden fences. People's gardens were on the other side, full of toys, flower pots, laundry lines, random decorations. It was quiet, except for the wind brushing past the leaves. A couple of joggers passed us. A cyclist rang their bell at the far end. Everything felt normal, but he kept walking slightly ahead of me. Not far, just enough to make me adjust my pace. When he talked, he'd half look at me and half look over someone's fence. He stepped closer to one at one point, trying to see inside. I joked about him snooping, but he just shrugged and said something vague. He didn't laugh with me. He didn't explain. He just kept walking like it didn't matter. We passed a house with a huge trampoline, and I heard a dog barking inside the garden. He froze for a second, like the sound surprised him. Then he leaned in just a bit, trying to see through a small gap where the fence didn't fully meet the post. I didn't know what to say about it, so I pretended I was looking at the sky while he stared into someone's garden like he was checking for something. I thought maybe he knew the area or lived nearby. It didn't cross my mind that anything dangerous was happening. I'd only been walking with him for 15 minutes. Nothing felt intense yet. Then we passed a house where the back gate was slightly open. Not in a creepy way, just loose like someone forgot to latch it. He glanced at it and slowed down. His whole body changed. His shoulders dropped, and he tilted his head toward the gap like something inside caught his attention. I watched him, confused, but he didn't say anything. He stepped closer. Not inside the garden, but close enough to make me uncomfortable. He looked at the gate like he recognized it. That's when the voices came. Faint at first, like someone shouting from far away. Then louder, firm, rushed, not casual conversation. Commands. I turned around and saw two officers turning onto the path from behind us. Not walking, moving fast. Their eyes locked straight on him. My chest tightened as soon as I realized they weren't just patrolling. They were looking directly at the guy I was with. One officer called out to him, loud enough that the whole path went silent. He froze. I froze. A jogger who was passing us slowed down like he didn't want to get involved. Everything started happening way faster than I could process. Another officer came from the opposite end of the path. Then another from the side garden entrance. They surrounded the area like they'd been tracking someone for a while. The guy's face drained of color. He didn't even look at me. He just stared at the ground like he knew exactly what was about to happen. One officer stepped forward, telling him to stay where he was. He didn't run. He didn't argue. He held his hands out slightly like he was done pretending. They grabbed his arms and pulled them behind him. He didn't resist. They started walking him back toward the entrance while the other officers checked around the nearby gardens. I stood there frozen, holding my bag like it was a shield. An officer looked at me and asked if I was with him. My voice cracked when I answered. She nodded slowly like she expected that reaction and told me I wasn't in trouble. But then she told me something that made my brain flip. They had been searching the area for a man reported for climbing into multiple gardens along the back path. He'd been spotted by 2 homeowners earlier trying to open back doors and checking windows. Every time they came close to catching him, he managed to slip away. And he'd been matching with women on dating apps under fake names and fake lives, meeting them in different walking spots so he could blend in and not look suspicious. That included me. He had matched with me using an alias. None of the details he gave me were real. Not his job, not where he lived, not the pictures he used except one. They'd been trying to track him for hours, and someone reported seeing him near this path 15 minutes before I arrived. When he messaged me earlier asking if I wanted to walk, he was already in the area. I kept thinking about the open gate he stopped at, the way he checked the corners of gardens, the way he kept walking slightly ahead of me. All those behaviors I brushed off suddenly made sense. He wasn't nervous or quirky. He was scouting. He had gotten comfortable enough walking with me that he didn't bother to hide it. The officer asked if he said anything strange, if he acted like he wanted to go off the path or take another route. I told her everything I could remember, but the more I talked, the more sick I felt. He had been leading me through the exact areas he had been sneaking into earlier. I had been steps away from houses he tried to break into, completely unaware of the danger he brought with him. They walked him past me one more time. His eyes didn't meet mine once. It was like I didn't exist now that he knew he was caught. He didn't look angry or sad. He looked empty, like he had already accepted he wasn't getting away. I watched them take him away while people in the nearby houses peeked through their windows. A couple stood near their fence, pointing at the officers like they recognized the guy. One woman said he had tried her back door earlier before she scared him off. Hearing that made my stomach twist even harder. I walked back to my car slowly, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock the door. I sat inside with the engine off for a few minutes, trying to breathe normally. I kept replaying the walk in my head. Every fence he looked over. Every garden he stared into. Every time he paused. I realized how easily I could have been dragged into something he planned, or something he didn't plan but decided in the moment. The whole walk had been a route he already knew too well. I blocked his profile even though it didn't matter. The police told me he used different names all the time. I never even learned his real one. I woke up tired, annoyed at myself for staying up too late, and the weather looked dead gray through my window. One of those mornings where everything feels boring before it even starts. But she messaged me early saying she was already out in town and asked if I wanted to grab a coffee. I didn't know why, but I just said yes. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I just didn't want another day sitting in my room doing nothing. The cafe she picked was small and quiet, the kind of place people go to do their work while pretending they listen to the music playing in the background. When I walked in, she was already sitting near the wall, both hands wrapped around her cup like she was cold. She waved at me and smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. She looked tired, like she'd been awake for too many hours. I sat down, and straight away, I noticed she kept looking past me. Not a little glance here and there, proper turning her head and checking the door behind me like she expected someone to walk in. At first, I thought she was waiting for someone else, or maybe thought she recognized someone. I didn't ask because I didn't want to sound weird. I just tried to act normal, talking about random things so the conversation wouldn't die. But the whole time, her eyes kept flicking over my shoulder. Even when she talked to me, her attention was split. She nodded something I said, then instantly checked the door again. I kept pretending I didn't notice because I didn't want the whole thing to get awkward, but inside I was thinking she probably didn't want to be there. Maybe she regretted agreeing to the date. Maybe she was planning an excuse to leave and was waiting for the right moment. The cafe wasn't busy. Only a couple of older people sitting near the counter, a student typing on his laptop, and a man sitting alone in the corner reading something on his phone. The music was soft. The air smelled like warm pastries. Everything felt normal except her behavior. I tried to ignore it, sipping my drink slowly, but the more she did it, the harder it was to pretend it meant nothing. At one point, she leaned forward a bit like she was about to tell me something serious, but then her expression changed and she straightened up again. Her hands were stiff. Her shoulders were raised. She looked like someone who wanted to bolt out of the place but was forcing herself to stay seated. I finally asked if she was okay. She said she was fine, but her voice didn't sound fine at all. It sounded tangled and distracted. I kept talking anyway, trying to fill the space, but her eyes weren't on me. They kept tracking something behind me. Something specific. Something she expected to move. I didn't want to turn around and make it obvious, so I kept pretending my drink was the most interesting thing in the world. Then I noticed her breathing changed. It got faster. She crossed her arms, but kept one hand near her bag like she needed to grab something at any second. She kept glancing at the corner of the cafe, but I couldn't see who she was looking at without twisting around. A few minutes later, she looked toward the door again, but this time she didn't look away. Her face froze completely. She wasn't blinking. She wasn't moving. She wasn't even hiding her reaction anymore. She just stared. I didn't know what to do, so I just stayed still and waited for her to say something, but she didn't. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow ones, like someone was pretending not to be rushed but clearly was. The air in the room changed. People went quiet. Chairs scraped. A few heads turned. I kept my eyes on her because her reaction told me more than anything else. She swallowed hard and still didn't speak. Her fingers dug into her sleeve. Her shoulders stiffened like she'd been hit with cold water. I had no idea what was happening, but I knew it had nothing to do with me. Two officers walked past me, barely glancing at my table. They spread out like they already knew exactly where they needed to go. One stood near the door. Another walked around the tables like he was checking every person in the room. I heard one of them speak quietly to someone near the counter. Then everything sped up. They moved straight to the corner where the lone man was sitting. He had his head down over his phone. He didn't even lift his eyes when they approached him. The officers grabbed his arms before he reacted. Chairs fell over. The whole cafe went dead silent except for the sound of them dragging the man up from his seat. He didn't fight, at least not loudly. He just kept twisting like he wanted to break free without making a scene. The officers moved fast, locking him from everyone else. They pushed him toward the door, stepping around people who stared like they'd just walked into the wrong movie. I still didn't turn around fully. I only watched her. Her entire body loosened like she'd been holding herself together for weeks. She finally let out this shaky breath like she'd been drowning and just reached the surface. Her eyes weren't wide anymore. She looked exhausted, relieved, drained, and scared at the same time. She didn't look proud or victorious. She looked like someone who'd been running for too long and finally stopped. One of the officers paused at our table for a second. He said something to her quietly. She nodded without speaking. She didn't look embarrassed. She didn't look at me either. She was staring down at her hands like she was ashamed and relieved all at once. She grabbed her bag slowly and stood up. Not rushed, just steady, like she was trying to regain control of herself. Without even looking at me, she placed something on the table. It was a small folded form, like some kind of document. She didn't explain it. She didn't say goodbye. She just walked out with the officer who spoke to her. When the door closed behind them, the whole cafe went quiet again, like someone muted the world. People were whispering, trying to guess what happened. A couple of workers were cleaning up the mess near the corner. The man who'd been dragged out was gone. The officers were gone. She was gone. Only the form she left behind was still on the table. I didn't want to touch it at first, but curiosity won. I opened it slowly. It wasn't a letter or anything dramatic. It was a printed notice with case numbers and information about someone being under protective monitoring. It didn't say much. Just confirmed she'd been helping them track someone who'd been following her for months, and that the person had a pattern of showing up anywhere she posted she'd be. She must have known he was nearby the moment we sat down. The part that hit me hardest was the small line near the bottom saying she had been instructed not to confront the man directly and to pretend to carry on with normal activities to avoid alerting him. That explained everything. Her eyes, her reactions, her silence, her sudden exit. She hadn't been nervous about the date. She was watching him the whole time we were talking. I left the cafe slowly, feeling this weird mix of concern and confusion. I didn't message her afterwards. I didn't want to make her situation worse. I still think about the way she kept looking past me. How she held her cup like she needed something to ground herself. How she walked out without looking back. I don't usually drive across town for anyone, especially not someone I barely talked to for 2 days, but that night I just wanted to get out of my house. I'd been sitting around doing nothing for hours, scrolling through apps, feeling that the whole week had been pointless. He messaged me saying he'd cook something small and that I could come over if I wanted. Normally I'd say no because going to someone's place too early is weird, but he seemed alright, and his profile didn't look like some random scam page. He even sent a picture of the outside of his house when I asked for the door number. It looked clean and normal, like one of those quiet streets where people leave bikes outside without worrying. I drove there just after sunset. The sky was weird, all faded blue and yellow, and the roads were almost empty. I remember thinking how peaceful everything looked. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic. I wasn't even nervous. I was more annoyed at myself for letting someone convince me to leave my house on a weekday when I had to work the next morning. I just thought it would be quick, like an hour or two. Then I'd head back home and pretend I was social for once. When I turned onto the street, it looked completely different from the picture he sent. Not the houses, those were the same, but the energy. I noticed flashes of blue light bouncing off the windows. I slowed down, thinking it was just an ambulance or someone's alarm going off. Then I saw the vans. Big dark vans blocking half the road. Officers everywhere. Not the normal ones either. These ones had helmets and heavy gear, and some were aiming their lights at the house he told me to come to. For a second, I thought I typed the wrong number. I grabbed my phone to recheck the message, but before I even unlocked it, I saw movement in the house. Someone was pressed up against the window like they were trying to climb out. They were yanking it open, pushing their shoulder through, trying to squeeze out like the whole place was on fire. Then a couple officers shouted something and ran toward the side gate. More went around the back. It looked like they were expecting someone to bolt any second. My chest tightened so badly I actually forgot how to breathe for a moment. I parked way down the street behind another car because I didn't want to get involved in whatever was happening. I didn't even know if I should stay in the car or drive away. I kept staring at the house like my brain refused to accept that this was the same location the guy sent me. My hands were shaking like crazy. I didn't know who was in the window or why they were trying to escape, but someone was definitely in the middle of something messed up. While I sat there frozen, the neighbor came out and started talking to one of the officers. She kept pointing toward the house and shaking her head. It reminded me of those moments when a teacher catches someone doing something stupid and everyone else just steps away like they had no idea. That whole street had this heavy silence, like all the residents were hiding behind their curtains watching everything go down. The officers tried the front door. They weren't kicking it in or anything, but they were loud enough that everyone heard it. More of them spread out across the driveway. I felt so sick because the guy had told me to come exactly at this time. I kept thinking how close I had come to walking up the path and knocking on the door while all this was happening. It made my stomach twist. If I had arrived 2 minutes earlier, I would have walked straight into the middle of the whole thing. I tried calling him just to see if he'd answer. The call rang once, then cut. No message. No explanation. Nothing. That made everything worse. I kept imagining him in the house while officers swarmed around. Not because he was the one climbing out the window, but because he might have been doing something that dragged in people who didn't even know they were involved. The person at the window tried again to push themselves out, but someone outside grabbed their arm and pulled them back inside fast. It wasn't violent, just quick, like they didn't want them hurting themselves. Then 2 officers from the front stepped in through the door. After that, everything went quiet for a few minutes. No movement, no sounds, just silence. I felt like I was going to faint. I saw another officer walking around talking to people who'd been standing near their gates watching. He kept writing stuff down. A couple of people shook their heads like they were annoyed. One guy pointed toward the house and started explaining something with his hands. It looked like he'd been waiting for this to happen. I couldn't hear anything from where I was parked, but it didn't want to get any closer. Then my phone buzzed. My whole body jumped. It was a notification from the app. Not from his number. From his profile. It said the account had been flagged and removed. I stared at that message trying to process what kind of situation I had almost stepped into. I clicked his profile from our chat, and everything was gone. Pictures wiped. Bio wiped. Chat wiped. It was like he never existed. A couple minutes later, one of the officers came out of the house with a tablet and started asking questions to some guy standing nearby. I stayed in my car because I didn't want them to think I was connected to whatever was happening inside. I kept my head low, but I still watched everything through the gap in my steering wheel. I saw two people being walked out. One was the person who tried to escape the window earlier. They looked rough, like they'd been through something. The other person, the second one, looked like they had been running some kind of weird setup inside that house. They weren't handcuffed, but their face said everything. Tired, caught, finished. One of the neighbors walked past my car and whispered something like, "Finally," under their breath. It sounded like this wasn't the first time something weird had happened there. I waited until the officers started packing up and the street began to look normal again before I even moved. I was terrified that someone would knock on my window and ask what I was doing there. When it was finally clear, I drove home without looking back. My hands were sweating so hard the steering wheel felt wet. Later that night, I searched the address online. It popped up on a bunch of fake Airbnb scam warnings. People had booked the place, turned up to the street, and realized the interior photos didn't match anything. Some had paid hundreds. One person mentioned seeing someone inside the house looking out at them but refusing to open the door. That matched way too neatly with the image of the person at the window trying to escape. The thought that he tried to get me to come over while all of that was happening made me feel sick. I still don't know if I was supposed to be another fake guest, another victim, or just someone he thought he could distract while the whole thing blew up. I blocked the app for a week after that because every time I thought about it, my chest tightened again. I'd been wiped from work and honestly just wanted to sit at home scrolling through random stuff until I passed out. But she messaged me out of nowhere on the app, asking if I was free for dinner. Her profile looked normal, maybe even a bit too normal, but I didn't overthink it. I'd had such a dry run with dates that when someone actually seemed keen, I just went with it. She suggested this small restaurant near the center of town. Nothing fancy, just one of those places that always smells like garlic and warm bread when you walk in. I figured it was safe enough. Public place. Good lighting. People around. Cool. When I first saw her outside, she looked exactly like her pictures, which honestly shocked me because I've had the complete opposite happen way too many times. She waved at me like she'd known me for ages. She was smiling hard, almost too hard, but I didn't think anything weird about it at first. She acted like she was excited just to be there, which felt nice after dealing with people who acted bored before they even sat down. Still, something was off. Not scary off, just off. She kept staring at my face like she was comparing me to something in her mind, and it made me a bit confused, but I let it go because I didn't want to kill the mood. We got a table near the window. The place was busy but not loud. Most people looked relaxed, eating their food, chatting quietly, doing normal stuff. I ordered something simple because I didn't want to look like I ate like a maniac. She barely looked at the menu. She just kept watching me like she was waiting for something. Every time I looked away, I felt her eyes burning into the side of my face. It wasn't flirty either. It was like she was checking me for flaws or something. She talked a lot. I don't even remember half of what she said because it didn't sound like she actually cared about the conversation. She kept bringing every topic back to me. My job, my family, what car I drove, where I lived, even what phone I used. It didn't feel like normal interest. It felt like she was verifying stuff. Like she'd studied me before meeting me and was ticking boxes in her head. At one point, I caught her staring at my hands and then back to my face, almost like she was double-checking that I was the same person. I asked if something was wrong, but she snapped out of it and said no in a way that didn't match her expression at all. The food came, and she barely touched hers, just poked at it while I tried to eat mine without making it awkward. People were walking in and out, couples laughing, plates clattering, normal vibes. Nothing felt dangerous. Nothing felt like it was about to flip into chaos. I had no reason to be suspicious. I just thought maybe she was nervous or weird or whatever. Everyone's got their thing. Halfway through my plate, the whole atmosphere in the room shifted. I didn't hear anything at first, but I saw one of the servers freeze. He looked toward the door like he just spotted a ghost. Then I heard heavy footsteps. Not one or two. A lot, like a whole group marching at the same time. Before I could even turn my head, people in dark jackets flooded into the restaurant. They didn't shout. They didn't scream for everyone to stay still. They just spread out with this serious look like they've been tracking someone for hours. My stomach dropped because stuff like that never happens around me. Everyone around us went quiet instantly. Forks stopped. Drinks were set down. Even the music suddenly felt too loud in the silence. The woman across from me stiffened like she'd been stabbed with ice. She kept her hands under the table and wouldn't look at the door. Her smile was gone. Her whole face changed like she wasn't even the same person I'd sat down with. It wasn't fear. It was panic mixed with guilt, like she already knew the whole thing was about her. One of the officers pointed toward our table. They didn't walk. They practically rushed. I looked around because I thought they were going for someone behind us. I even moved my chair a bit so I wasn't in their way, but they told me to stay seated. My heart was smashing against my ribs. I honestly thought maybe someone had mistaken me for someone else. But no, they weren't looking at me. They were staring straight at her, like they'd been hunting her down all evening. She kept whispering under her breath, not loud enough for me to hear. Her hands were shaking under the table. One of the officers told her to put her phone on the table. She didn't move. They repeated it again, more firm, and she finally placed it down like it weighed a ton. Her whole body looked like it was about to collapse. One officer turned the screen toward me. My own face was staring back. Dozens of pictures. Old ones. Ones I didn't even know still existed. Screenshots of conversations I never had. Profiles using my name but details twisted into something else. My stomach flipped so hard I thought I was going to be sick right there. They tracked the phone to the restaurant because she'd been answering messages using my photos minutes before I'd arrived. People had been sending her money. People thought they were talking to me. Some even threatened to come find me. And all the time she was sitting across from me acting like everything was fine. She didn't deny a single thing. She just kept her head down like she'd been waiting for this moment. The officers asked me if I knew her. I told them I just met her. They checked my ID right there to make sure I was actually me. The people around us were staring like we were in some weird live show. She wouldn't even look at me. Not once. Even when they cuffed her and stood her up, she kept her eyes glued to the floor like the whole thing wasn't real. They walked her out while the restaurant went quiet again. People kept glancing at me like I was the one who'd caused the trouble. I sat there staring at my half-eaten food, not even able to process how my face had been dragged into something that messed up. I didn't know whether to feel angry or creeped out or embarrassed. I just felt empty, like my name and face had been taken without me even noticing. I left the restaurant without finishing anything. The waiter tried to ask if I was okay, but I just walked past him because I didn't even know what to say. I got into my car and just sat there in silence for ages. I checked my own socials, my photos, everything I could think of, just to make sure nothing else had been messed with. It made me realize how easy it is for someone to take something as simple as your picture and turn it into whatever they want. I didn't hear anything else about her after that. No updates. No news. Nothing. It was like she vanished the second the door closed behind her. But every time I go out now, I catch myself looking around the room a bit too much, wondering if someone else is using my face somewhere, talking to strangers, making plans, taking money, pretending to be me all while I'm just living my normal life.